Chapter 888. Porcelano. For some reason, when he heard this name, Immortal Toya felt like he couldn't spit it out. There was also that familiar silk-coiled heroine just now. This was Immortal Toya's first time seeing a humanoid Spider-Man who could spit out spider silk from its butt. Could this be a modern hero's bad taste? Immortal Toya wasn't too familiar with Mishio's hero cultivators. He had only heard of a few who were famous in the International Alliance of Cultivators. Cultivators in different countries had different ideologies, but for the most part, for the sake of their reputation in the world, cultivators would do their best to accept missions issued by the Alliance of Cultivators and help maintain order. According to many cases, many cultivators had gradually gained their position and reputation in the Jianghu through such quests. Of course, there were exceptions, for example, grenade-throwing senior immortal. This great death-courting senior never took the initiative to accept missions, but freeloaded them. In the end, he freeloaded off of them. Because it was an era of peace, modern cultivators paid more attention to reputation and status, and it was the same for Mishio's hero cultivators. Of course, there was another important reason, and that was that in Mishio Alliance, there was a lot of reward money for assisting Mishio Alliance in completing missions. They had to rely on this to make a living. After all, everyone had to make a living through sponsored partnerships. Immortal Toya took a deep breath as he sensed activity all around him. Within a radius of 3,000 li, a lot of powerful auras were converging on the frontline battlefield, and more than 10 Mishio hero cultivators were on their way. Some of these people were strong, while others were weak. The weak coming to the frontline battlefield was undoubtedly providing Devil Gut Fungus Lord with supplies. There isn't much time left, is there? Immortal Toya sighed. He realized that he had to resolve this battle as soon as possible. And there actually wasn't much time left. In 6 minutes at most, those hero cultivators would arrive on the scene. To avoid the situation becoming chaotic, he had to resolve this battle in 6 minutes. Foreigner. At that moment, SS-level hero Porcelano strolled out of the air. With every step he took, a blue and white porcelain flower bloomed beneath his feet, giving him an awe-inspiring sense of majesty. Immortal Toya already had a general understanding of Porcelano's abilities. He had the ability to shatter. Everything that got close to Porcelano's body would instantly turn into fragile porcelain, and then be shattered by his aura. This was an extremely advanced assimilation of matter spell, but it also had a fatal flaw, and that was that if you were the slightest bit careless, you could easily assimilate yourself. As an SS-level hero, it could only be said that Porcelano was Porcelano. He had gotten rid of the danger of assimilation and refined this spell into his passive skill. As far as Immortal Toya knew, Porcelano had put a lot of thought into refining this skill. The only regret was that Porcelano had a lot of time. And now, no one wanted to hug their wife to sleep, only to have her turn into a porcelain doll the next day. Since I master, you, foreigner, you said, Porcelano, king, you, that. Since I said that you're a foreigner, you just need to watch carefully. This battle has never belonged to you from the start. Porcelano sneered, for this kind of demon, my ability is a natural counter to him. Foreigner, just watch and see. I'll help you win without doing anything. As he spoke, Porcelano jumped up and charged straight at the insect army. His assimilation of matter spell had already become a passive skill. As long as he could reach the center of the battlefield and touch Devil Gut Fungus Lord, it would be his victory. Want to get close to me? On the other side, it was clear that Devil Gut Fungus Lord had also reacted swiftly. This was a very dangerous old man. In front of him, the endless insect army had been assimilated into fragile blue and white porcelain, and it looked like it would be difficult to fend them off. Porcelano was full of confidence as he continued to push forward. Devil Gut Fungus Lord frowned slightly. He increased the number of immortal bugs again, and this time, he no longer wrapped the immortal bugs with water elements. He attached the power of fire to the immortal bugs. The burning immortal bugs turned into small fireballs and smashed towards Porcelano. At first, Porcelano didn't understand the meaning of this move. But as the temperature increased, he sensed that something was wrong. The blue and white porcelain he was wearing was actually melting bit by bit at this high temperature. The intense heat had a huge impact on his assimilation of matter spell. Ah! Then, surrounded by the burning immortal insects, Porcelano let out a cry. I have to save him. Immortal Toya knew that Porcelano had already failed. But in this situation, he didn't dare approach him. He wasn't afraid of Devil Gut Fungus Lord's burning immortal insects, but of Porcelano himself. If he rushed over and was turned into porcelain, what would he do? Immortal Toya never expected that this social problem of racketeering would actually manifest itself on a cultivator's battlefield in a whole new way. No, there had to be a way. Immortal Toya took a deep breath. He had learned this trick from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal before. There had been several times when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been at a disadvantage, and Immortal Toya had used his most powerful skill. And now was the most difficult time for him. Sure enough, when you couldn't solve a problem, you still had to look for Ling Jinren. Jinren? Senior Ling Jinren. At that moment, Immortal Toya raised his head and tentatively called out twice at the sky. However, the void was empty, without the slightest response. Immortal Toya didn't believe it. Everyone knew that Ling Jinren, who was introverted on the outside, liked to do shady things like peeping. Although they weren't good with words and didn't say much in the chat group, everyone had a profound understanding of Ling Jinren's antics. Senior Ling Jinren. Immortal Toya shouted again. Actually, Immortal Toya was a little timid when he shouted. After all, his relationship with Ling Jinren wasn't as good as grenade-throwing Senior Immortals. If he shouted like this, the other party might not even pay attention to him. And the most important thing was that because of their bad relationship, Ling Jinren might not even be bothered to observe his performance on the front lines. So after thinking it over, Immortal Toya decided to add a wager. Ling Jinren. If you help me, I promise that from this moment on, I'll join the Crispy Noodle Snacks sect. I'll eat crispy noodle snacks with you every day. Just as he finished speaking, a spatial rift opened up in the void. Then, a bottle fell into Immortal Toya's hands. This was a bottle of 84 disinfectant which had been personally enchanted by Wang Ling. Chapter 889. A bottle of enchanted 84 disinfectant. Immortal Toya took the godly weapon with both hands, and unexpectedly didn't feel any ripples in his heart, because he felt that he was already used to it. Only Ling Jinren could do this kind of shocking and incomparably basic operation. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was also shaken by the appearance of this bottle of disinfectant. The truth was that he had already forgotten who had created him, and just felt that this bottle of disinfectant which had suddenly appeared was familiar. When Devil Gut Fungus Lord had still been a tiny bacterium, his spiritual intelligence hadn't matured yet, and he had no idea where on earth he had come from. This was why Devil Gut Fungus Lord had thought that he was a bacterium born with a golden spoon in its mouth, and was the true fungus of destiny. But what Devil Gut Fungus Lord never expected was that the moment this enchanted 84 disinfectant appeared, there would actually be some kind of resonance between the enchanted and the enchanted, which simultaneously stimulated Devil Gut Fungus Lord's memory. In Devil Gut Fungus Lord's mind, the tranquil and fair face of a teenager unexpectedly appeared. He had short hair that fluttered lightly, and there was a languid look in his eyes, as if he would never wake up. Looking at his face, he didn't look like a threat at all, and was just a harmless teenager. But this teenager gave Devil Gut Fungus Lord a great shock and a sense of crisis. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already drenched in a cold sweat when he recalled this image, and all his attacks were interrupted. The instant Devil Gut Fungus Lord's thoughts paused, the millions of immortal bugs in the air became a headless swarm of flies, and started to tear each other apart. Seeing this, Porcelano hurriedly retreated. He pulled back dozens of steps in a row, and didn't dare rush in recklessly. Just now, he had almost lost his life because he had been too aggressive and rash. At the same time, his eyes focused on the bottle of disinfectant in Immortal Toya's hand. He was convinced that it was because of this bottle of disinfectant that this ferocious Devil Gut Fungus Lord had stopped his attack. Porcelano, brother, what is this bottle of magic weapon that looks like disinfectant? For a moment, Immortal Toya actually didn't know how to answer this question. A magic treasure that looked like disinfectant? No, this was a freaking bottle of disinfectant. The supermarket had a special price of 29.88 yuan per bottle, and it was the kind that bought one get one free during the special season. Immortal Toya glanced at the packaging for this bottle of disinfectant. The huge yellow words, "Free gift," were particularly eye-catching. This enchanted bottle of disinfectant was also a free gift. Generally speaking, gifts were only bundled together for promotion purposes when they were about to expire. But since it had already been through Ling Junren's hands, this bottle of disinfectant, which was about to expire, had clearly reached its peak. Sigh, it had actually been touched by Ling Junren's hot and beautiful hands. Staring at this bottle of disinfectant, Immortal Toya actually felt a little jealous. Impossible. Impossible. On the other side, Devil Gut Fungus Lord, whose memories had been awakened by the disinfectant and who remembered his origins, could not accept the truth before him at all. He clutched his head and screamed in shock. Immortal Toya sighed. He had already opened the bottle of disinfectant, and a pungent smell wafted out, making Devil Gut Fungus Lord feel even more pain. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was clearly at a distance, but the smell of this bottle of disinfectant was already effective on him. You want to kill me? Devil Gut Fungus Lord gritted his teeth and did his utmost to deny his origins. I was born the strongest. I don't have any master. My devouring power is invincible in the universe. Given time, I'll definitely become the Supreme Devil Lord. Devil Gut Fungus Lord shouted, the power of Outer Tao. He condensed all the 3 powers of Outer Tao that President Bai had already collected into his body. The 5 great elements gathered on his body to form an elemental glass armor, and all kinds of dazzling lights superimposed on each other. It was like a bunch of cheap light effects that a renminbi player would spend a lot of money on. They might be cheap, but they looked very awesome. In addition, the power of reverse polarity also appeared. A Tai Chi disc appeared on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's glass armor, which was the symbol of reverse polarity. Porcelano turned pale with fright. He even has this kind of outer Tao. This was practically the outer Tao that thousands of cultivators dreamed of. Obtaining it was like having the power to defy the heavens and change fate. Even if you were on the verge of death, with this ability, you could resurrect on the spot with full health. Is it Mishio Alliance? Tell the other hero cultivators to stop. This isn't an opponent they can deal with. Porcelano shouted. Porcelano was very clear about the current situation, facing such an enemy. The rest of the hero cultivators wouldn't be of any use at all. Even he had almost been seriously injured by this enemy. If they recklessly charged over without a plan, it would be tantamount to sending themselves to their deaths from thousands of miles away. The current situation was already very messy. More people would only add to the chaos. Mishio Alliance responded, it's too late. In 1 minute, the hero cultivators will reach the front line. Porcelano grit his teeth. Bastard. 1 minute. Hearing their replies, Immortal Toya nodded. 1 minute was actually enough, and enough to punish this Devil Gut Fungus Lord several times over. Porcelano, little brother, let's retreat. Your bottle of disinfectant is very strong, but it's up against the power of reverse polarity outer Tao. There's no way you can kill him. Not necessarily. Immortal Toya shook his head. He poured out a drop of disinfectant, and like Guanyin throwing out sweet dew from a jade bottle, he sprayed it in Devil Gut Fungus Lord's direction. Bzzzt. This glittering drop of divine liquid released extremely powerful spirit power, which actually carried a hint of annihilation. Porcelano's expression changed dramatically with fright. At the same time, the color of heaven and earth changed with this drop of divine liquid, and a huge vortex appeared in the air. The spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant actually directly tore through the sky. Porcelano's jaw dropped in shock, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This was actually the spirit power contained in a drop of disinfectant? He felt that the spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant was dozens of times stronger than his. No. This was no longer disinfectant. It was a drop of super divine liquid, one of a kind. Sensing the danger of the divine liquid, Devil Gut Fungus Lord knew that he was powerless to resist, but relying on the power of reverse polarity outer Tao, he still laughed wildly. Want to kill me? I'm an immortal being. BZZT. As soon as he said that, the divine liquid burst out with energy again, and a powerful purifying power swept across the area. In the next moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's eyes were filled with astonishment as his elemental glass armor and the disc of reverse polarity outer Tao directly exploded on the spot. The power of this drop of disinfectant was above that of outer Tao. Chapter 890. This drop of divine liquid shook the air, and the world fell silent as the ripples spread out. Even immortal Toya was shaken by the power of this drop of divine liquid. After throwing it out, he stood motionless in the air for a long time, completely shaken by this scene. It turned out that all along, Ling Jinren was more powerful than he had imagined. Of course, immortal Toya knew that Ling Jinren was a top expert, but after personally experiencing the formidable power of this drop of disinfectant, immortal Toya completely understood. How the hell was this a top expert? This was simply a god. It seemed that Ling Jinren and the domain of the gods had a very close relationship. Immortal Toya secretly worshipped him in his heart. This wasn't a technique that people in the world below could use at all. In Immortal Toya's view, this was already far above the venerated immortal realm, and only the legendary experts of the domain of the gods could trace the realm above the venerated immortal realm. Whether it was Wang Zhen or Lu Qingyi, Immortal Toya had already come into contact with them. These two were experts from the domain of the gods, and their abilities were extraordinary. But what Immortal Toya didn't quite understand was that, judging from Ling Jinren's performance, he seemed to have a very limited understanding of the domain of the gods. Could it be that Ling Jinren wasn't from the domain of the gods? Or perhaps, there was still a realm above the domain of the gods in this world? Immortal Toya pondered this in his heart. At the same time, in Porcelano's eyes, Immortal Toya's action just now was like a miracle, so, he's an expert. Porcelano had to admit that he had been blind. He had thought that this outsider from Huaxiao Nation wasn't strong, and had never thought that the other party would actually be able to take out such a magic treasure. Furthermore, after taking out that drop of divine liquid, which was clearly so powerful, the other party was actually unmoved at all as he stood in the air, as if he was doing something insignificant. This was a serious expert. It was very obvious that this expert was already a veteran of hundreds of battles. To remain unmoved by such a powerful fluctuation was the style of an almighty. It was just that there weren't many famous experts in Huaxiao Nation. That was because every nation had a different constitution. Huaxiao Alliance didn't have a hero cultivator mechanism like Mixiao Alliance. Huaxiao Alliance's cultivators might be more famous locally, but they had always lacked international fame. Of course, the one who had recently risen to prominence was that great death-courting senior grenade-throwing senior immortal, the #1 true venerated in the world. In Huaxiao Alliance, Porcelano only knew the 10 generals, and really didn't know anyone else. Buzz! This drop of divine liquid penetrated everything and landed on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's chest. In just an instant, the divine liquid directly melted into his chest. Devil Gut Fungus Lord let out a heart-wrenching scream. He couldn't stop the power of this drop of divine liquid at all. At this moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord felt like a piece of ice being cooked over fire. Endless steam was evaporating from his body as he hugged his head and shouted, "You created me, and now you want to destroy me." He had already accepted the fact that he had been created because Devil Gut Fungus Lord realized that he could not resist this destructive power at all. "If you had been wholeheartedly kind, I might have spared your life. But you've stirred up a storm in this vast world, so naturally I can't let you live." Immortal Toya stared at Devil Gut Fungus Lord, who was about to die. At that moment, only his upper body was left of him. In the distance, more and more hero cultivators were rushing over, many of whom still had mud and scars on their faces and bodies. They had all rushed to the front line as reinforcements after hearing Mixiao Alliance's order. In the end, just as they were about to arrive, a sudden burst of overwhelming spirit power had scared some hero cultivators so much that they couldn't steady their auras and fell from the sky on the spot. This was how the bruises and scars on their faces and bodies had come about. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." A burly blonde man floated in the air with his arms crossed. He was thin to begin with, but the moment he arrived at the front line, his muscles suddenly inflated as if they had been filled with air. Even Porcelano couldn't help bowing when he saw him. Mr. Olu. This was the SSS-level hero known as the Light of the City, Olu. He was also Mishio Alliance's most famous hero cultivator. The only SSS rank. But when he arrived at the scene, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already dying. Mr. Olu sighed in disappointment. "It seems that there is no need for me to do anything. But this is good too." As the Light of the City, Mr. Olu was actually very tired every time he carried out a mission. His special spell caused him to have to eat hair to gain power. Every time he ate a strand of hair, his power would double from his original base. Given how dangerous Devil Gut Fungus Lord was, Mr. Olu originally thought that he would have to eat all the hair this time. A bald head was the symbol of his strongest combat power. It was also the origin of his hero codename, City Light. Porcelano, this Huashio little brother isn't to be trifled with. Mr. Olu should have already sensed it just now. Mr. Olu nodded. That was indeed a very powerful force. None of their Mishio Alliance cultivators, including himself. To be able to unleash such powerful psionic energy, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had already been reduced to ashes. On behalf of the group of hero cultivators, Mr. Olu and Porcelano took the initiative to greet Immortal Toya. "Brother, may I ask, who on earth are you?" "Immortal Toya, I'm from the Office of Strategic Deception." The hero cultivators were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that this was the new sect that had recently produced a true venerated cultivator. "Then may I ask, Your Excellency?" Porcelano wanted to continue asking. Immortal Toya cupped his chin and thought carefully. He felt that it wasn't appropriate for him to reveal too much abroad. "Immortal Toya, I'm not sect leader. There's no need for sect leader to take action against this kind of evil." "Then may I ask, brother, what is your Taoist name?" Immortal Toya quickly replied, "I don't have a Taoist name. But please remember my name." "Brother, please speak." "My name is Audjua." That night, Audjua, who had already washed up and was about to go to bed, turned on the TV, and the female anchor reported eloquently, "According to the latest news our reporters have received, the evil that invaded Mishio's border today has been wiped out by the Office of Strategic Deception's cultivator Audjua." "Who on earth is this Mr. Jua? Let us hear what the other hero cultivators have to say about him." Audjua rubbed his eyes and repeatedly confirmed the news on the subtitles. That wasn't right. When had he gone abroad? Chapter 891. News of the demon-slaying battle taking place across the sea far away on Mishio Nation's border spread faster than Audjua had imagined. After seeing the news broadcast on TV, the battle-hardened Audjua could more or less guess what had happened. Someone in the Office of Strategic Deception must have been carrying out a mission, and had given him the credit again. But the problem was that he was a golden core stage cultivator. Now that everyone was bragging about him, Audjua immediately felt the pressure on him increase tremendously. In short, Audjua knew very well. "I'm afraid I won't be able to rest tonight." After the midnight news was broadcast, the phone in Audjua's apartment was ringing off the hook again with all kinds of congratulations. He checked the WeChat moments he had posted a few hours ago. The meaning of that sentence was actually very simple. There was only one simple word, tired. Of course, this wasn't because slaying demons was tiring, it was purely because he felt that ever since he had become the general administration of 100 schools and his reputation had risen rapidly, he felt a little powerless. But it just so happened that Audjua's retirement age was still very early. He had just taken this position, and he would have to work for at least another 500 years before he could retire. After the midnight news broadcast, Audjua's message instantly received almost a few hundred likes. As expected of Director Zhua, he can vanquish evil and defend the Tao across the sea. I saw it all. That Mishio hero cultivator's utterly convinced expression when he was interviewed. No one has ever made the City of Light show such an expression of admiration. Director Zhua is young and promising. Not only does he manage the students' studies, he also eliminates evil and upholds the Tao outside of work. He's a role model for the younger generation. I heard that the evil spirit also destroyed the Chrysanthemum Island of Immortal Toya, the head of the Office of Strategic Deception's Elixir team. I have some movie resources here to celebrate Director Zhua's righteous deed. Director Zhua can contact me at any time. After Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island is rebuilt, we'll use this as the theme and use Director Zhua as the main character to make a movie called 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Tenli Chrysanthemum. Zhua blushed at these praises. Because this matter really had nothing to do with him. But since the Office of Strategic Deception had already decided on this, he had no choice but to take the blame. Zhua felt very tired. He was just a scapegoat for someone else. But now, he had become the Wak King of the sect. August 22nd, Tuesday, the 9th day of the summer vacation. When Zhua went out that morning, the main entrance of the staff apartment building was already surrounded by a large group of reporters. They didn't dare break into the building directly, so they waited for him at the intersection in front of the building. Zhua had to pass by on his way to work. When Zhua appeared at the door, he immediately knew that something was wrong, but it was already too late to turn back as the reporters had already seen him. Director Zhua is out. After saying that, a reporter opened his briefcase, from which several telescopic eyes were released. They automatically floated in the air and aimed in Zhua's direction to film him from all directions. These large mechanical eyeballs were now the hottest interview magic weapons in the reporter circle. As long as the photo of the interviewee was put in, the telescopic eyes would automatically identify the target and track the interview. However, this kind of magic treasure was very expensive to make, and a small newspaper couldn't afford it. Zhua stood at the door, and several telescopic eyes had already taken the initiative to float over from a distance. Looking at the platform logo on the far-sighted hand, it was actually a toilet lid platform. The far-sighted hand played the interview questions which had already been recorded. Can Director Zhua reveal the details of how you defeated the evil spirit? I heard that the evil spirit was very strong, and Mishio Nation's missiles couldn't hurt it. As a golden core cultivator, what kind of magic weapon does Director Zhua have to defeat it? Zhua was stupefied. Details, how would he know about this? He did have a magic weapon to defeat it. It was his Shifu Zhua. But what could he say? He didn't dare say it at all. AI. Zhua sighed. The reporter in the distance heard Zhua's answer. Love? That reporter was instantly stunned beyond belief by this simple yet powerful answer. It could only be said that as expected of the most famous cadre in Songhai City who had arrested the most evil spirits and demons. The toilet lid platform reporter who used the telescopic eyes cried out in surprise. Director Zhua said that his magic weapon to defeat the evil spirit is actually love. There was a hubbub of voices. The group of reporters was also stupefied. Love? For a moment, the reporters on the road were silent as they pondered what on earth this meant. The toilet lid platform reporter sighed with emotion. It seems that the reason why the evil spirit was eliminated this time was because of Director Zhua's love. Director Zhua used the precise word, love, to vividly express his boundless and fearless love in the face of the evil spirit, his lofty ambition and his great determination to use love to influence the world, and his beautiful dream as a good cadre of the people. Love the people, love his work, he used his love and passion to influence the evil spirit. So that's how it is. Many of the reporters were dumbfounded for a moment. He quickly picked up a small notebook to record something. Zhua, at that moment, the reporters started to ask again with the telescopic eyes, what I said should be correct, right? Is there anything else Director Zhua would like to add? Zhua was at a loss for words. The toilet lid platform reporter cried out in surprise again. Me? Many of the other reporters who were taking notes looked up. Brother, may I ask, what does this mean? The toilet lid platform reporter took a few seconds to think, and then immediately knocked himself on the head. I'm such a blockhead. It actually took me so long to understand Director Zhuo's meaning. Director Zhuo's me is clearly I for everyone and everyone for me. One me, this is Director Zhuo's magic weapon for victory this time. Director Zhuo wants to tell us that when we encounter danger and difficulties, we should be like him, fearlessly sacrificing myself and spreading love to every corner of the world. So that's what he means. What a talent, brother. Brother, you're awesome. At that moment, the telescopic eye's voice came again. Thank you for your brilliant answer, Director Zhuo. Our interview is over, we won't disturb Director Zhuo anymore. If we do, we'll be criticized as well. Watching the telescopic eyes disappear into the distance, as well as the group of reporters who had scored full marks in Chinese reading comprehension, Zhuo fell into a long silence. His heart was so tired. Chapter 892. That day, Zhuo took sick leave and didn't go to work. After the group of reporters dispersed, he texted Zhong Lang. Little Zhong, I'm not feeling well today. There's been a lot of work at the office recently, sorry to trouble you. Zhuo had always been a very polite person. Although Zhong Lang had only been working with him for a few months, and the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City had become increasingly busy as Zhuo's reputation rose, Zhong Lang didn't feel tired at all. Zhuo was his superior and his brother, and the two of them were actually very close in private. Brother Zhuo, if you're not feeling well, leave it to me. Take care of yourself. You have to go to work, and you also have to vanquish evil in passing. It's really hard on you. Zhong Lang was watching the morning news when he texted Zhuo. The female anchor of the morning news rebroadcasted the Devil Gut Fungus Lord incident, and now the whole world knew that Zhuo had gone abroad to deal with someone. Back at the apartment, Zhuo put down his briefcase, took off his suit and shirt, and went to the fridge to take out a bottle of leather wine. This wasn't beer that ordinary people drank, but genuine leather wine, with the slogan, "Be naughty and happy," written on the bottle. This leather wine was made from fermented spirit herbs, and could make people feel happy when they were vexed. But leather wine was still wine, in the end. It wasn't good to drink too much. Usually, Zhuo would just drink a bottle after work to relieve his stress, but now he took out all the wine in the fridge because he felt particularly irritable today. For some reason, Zhuo felt that he was living less and less like himself. Furthermore, he was very unhappy. Bottle after bottle of leather wine went down his throat, but it still didn't alleviate his gloominess. When the alcohol level in his blood reached saturation, Zhuo lay on his back on the sofa and let out a long burp before he threw his head back and howled, unbearable. Ma Fei. Who's Ma Fei? Forget it, who cares who he is, unbearable, I feel so unbearable. Zhuo felt that he was losing more and more confidence. He lay on his back on the sofa. The leather wine in the bottle had already been used up, and he casually tossed it aside with a headache. The strong alcohol had already soaked through every vein in his body, and he fell into a deep sleep. At noon, Zhuo still hadn't woken up under the influence of the alcohol. At this moment, in his staff apartment, the sound of the doorknob turning came from the outer door. A slightly chubby man in black clothes barged into the apartment. I've already successfully infiltrated. The man in black clothes said softly. His mask was a communication treasure that could be used to contact external members. It wasn't easy to break into the staff apartment, but as a famous assassin of the dark web, Kong Rui still completed his mission. He rarely did this kind of infiltration work, but the big boss who hired him offered a high price that he couldn't refuse. After finishing this last job, I will retire. At the door, Kong Rui sighed. He took off the cloak that was draped over his shoulders and covered his entire body. Then, his figure and aura completely disappeared. In the living room, Odd Jewel was sprawled out on the sofa, drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. Kong Rui looked at the wine jars scattered on the coffee table, and his entire body tensed up to the extreme. This person didn't go to work today. Furthermore, how could an expert who had just exterminated evil spirits be drunk by a few jars of leather wine? He didn't believe it. Kong Rui's first reaction was that Odd Jewel was most likely faking it. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead as he observed Odd Jewel's movements from a distance, and unexpectedly didn't dare act rashly. A true expert was even more difficult to deal with when he was drunk. Inside the cloak, Kong Rui was drenched in sweat. As long as he didn't act, he was sure that he wouldn't be discovered. The cloak he was wearing was a world-defying magic weapon that had been passed down from his ancestors. Although his realm wasn't high, it was this cloak that had given him the courage to travel all over the world for so many years. But now, Kong Rui was faced with a difficult problem. He was wondering whether he should act against Odd Jewel. If this person was really drunk, then so be it. But if he was faking it, Kong Rui might not be able to keep his life. This task, it was more arduous than he had imagined. The request he had received was to retrieve a strand of Odd Jewel's hair. Although he didn't know what his employer was going to do with Odd Jewel's hair, it had sounded like a simple task at the time. All he had to do was break into the apartment while Odd Jewel was at work and look for a strand of hair. But now, because he couldn't determine whether or not Odd Jewel was faking it, Kong Rui felt a lot of psychological pressure. After breathing deeply for several dozen seconds, Kong Rui decided to bypass Odd Jewel and avoid making direct contact with him. Although the person in question was at home right now, directly going over to cut his hair might be life-threatening. Judging from Odd Jewel's habits, this person didn't bother with trifles. Maybe he could find a clue to Odd Jewel's hair in the bathroom. But when he arrived at the bathroom, Kong Rui was dumbfounded once again. He couldn't imagine that a man's bathroom could actually be so organized and so clean that not even a speck of dust could be found. Kong Rui bent down and touched the sink. There wasn't even a strand of hair in it. It looked like this director Zhuo basically didn't lose his hair when he showered. And even if he did, he had a habit of cleaning it up. Why? Kong Rui felt very hurt. Why did this man have so much hair, and why was he so strong? If even the bathroom was so clean, it looked like there wasn't any hair in the bedroom. The wine jars that were strewn about outside were just Odd Jewel's occasional indulgence. To be cautious, he went to the bedroom to confirm that there was no hair, and finally set his sights on the drunk Odd Jewel in the living room. So I have to do it myself? Kong Rui swallowed, took out a pair of small scissors, and slowly crawled over to the sofa. Just as he was about to make his move, Odd Jewel suddenly roared, "Do you know? Do you know, you're fat and I'm thin." Damn it! He'd been discovered. Kong Rui put away the scissors, drenched in sweat. He was clearly wearing a cloak, but the other party had actually guessed that he was fat. Sure enough, this guy was in disguise. In a panic, Kong Rui hurriedly fled out of the apartment, but at that moment, Odd Jewel actually flipped over and caught his foot. Ah! Kong Rui, who had just been about to flee, screamed and abruptly fell to the ground. His forehead made intimate contact with the coffee table in front of Odd Jewel with a loud bang. This coffee table had been a gift from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception. It was made of a special material that was extremely hard, and even a soul formation cultivator wouldn't be able to break it easily. Thus, Kong Rui passed out with his head covered in blood. Chapter 893. Wednesday, August 23rd. It was the 10th day of the summer vacation. In the morning, Odd Jewel finally woke up from his drunken stupor. He touched his lower body. It was soft and meaty. He had dreamed of Wang Ling just now, and had even pinched his Shifu's face. Shifu usually had a poker face and didn't even smile, but in his dream last night, Odd Jewel had dreamt that Shifu had smiled and had actually said a lot of encouraging words to him. For a moment, Odd Jewel couldn't help pinching his dear Shifu's little face. He had wanted to do this for a long time, but had never had the guts to try it. As expected, it was better to dream. Everything was possible in dreams. Thus, as he pinched, Audra woke up. That soft and meaty feeling was a little hard to forget. Shifu's face clearly looked very thin, but why did it feel so good to pinch? Audra couldn't help pinching the meaty thing below him a few more times. Then, he suddenly felt that there was something wrong with the feeling. This flesh was clearly a lot older than in his dream. When Audra opened his sleepy eyes, he saw a fatty lying under him. The fatty's forehead had been hit hard and the floor was covered in blood, and he was unconscious. And just now, he had actually been pinching the fatties, but for a long time. Looking at the time, Audra realized that he was late for work again. Sure enough, he couldn't drink too much leather wine, it was bad for his body. Even now, he was still a little groggy. Audra flipped through his phone and saw that there were several missed calls. They were all from Zhong Lang, who was worried that something had happened to Audra. In the end, he had even sent a text message saying that he was going to come to the apartment to take a look. Audra hurriedly called back. "Little Zhong, I'm fine. It's just that I stayed up too late last night and couldn't get up." Hearing that Audra had recovered, Zhong Lang breathed a sigh of relief. "It's good that brother Zhua is fine. Don't stay up so late. By the way, did you play games all night yesterday?" "Games?" Audra stared at the fatty's round butt. "That's right. I played Overwatch all night last night." After hanging up, Audra finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was well aware that he couldn't alert the enemy yet. The problem was how to deal with this fatty. This fatty had fainted in his apartment, and it was obvious that he was up to no good. He actually came to his house while he was drunk, and he even had a pair of suspicious scissors in his hand. Who knew what he was going to do to him? Audra subconsciously covered his crotch. These days, there was no shortage of news of people having their dick cut off in their sleep. It was just that Audra couldn't understand why this fatty, a total stranger to him, would be so ruthless to him. No matter what, he had to first find someone to detain this fatty and interrogate him. As one of the Office of Strategic Deception's key leaders, his home had actually been invaded. This was actually quite a serious matter. The first thing he did was call Fang Xing. Fang Xing was the leader of the goon squad, and the Office of Strategic Deception's interrogations were handed over to him. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception's goon squad was now connected to Warden Liang of Songhai First Prison. In other words, the goon squad's interrogations were legal. "Okay, Brother Zhua, I'm coming." On the other end of the line, Fang Xing's voice was still as sunny as ever, like the spring breeze and rain that moistened one's parched lungs. Audra nodded. I've got him under control. I'll be waiting for you." Audra had already confiscated the scissors and cloak Kong Rui had used to commit the crime. Furthermore, to be on the safe side, Audra had obediently tied Kong Rui up with an immortal binding lock. Audra had won this immortal binding lock when Songhai First Prison's Mahjong squad had gambled on it. The last time Audra had visited the prison, the Mahjong squad had been worried that they were short of one player, so Audra had personally played. Warden Liang hadn't believed that Audra would win, so he had used an immortal binding lock as a bet. After that, this immortal binding lock had been Audra's. It couldn't be helped. When it came to it, Audra was a human koi fish. His luck was just that good. Hands on his hips, Audra smiled in satisfaction. He then opened the curtains in the living room to let in the sunlight. Audra recalled that beautiful dream from last night. Unfortunately, when would he be able to pinch his Shifu's face in real life? Elsewhere, in the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling also gradually opened his eyes. He had had a very strange dream. He had actually dreamed of Audra. But it wasn't a prophetic dream, but a real dream of the mind. The real dream of the mind was used to maintain order. In many cases, it was a small heavenly Tao spell that Wang Ling had unconsciously activated. Usually, this spell would only work on the people around him whom he thought were important. Its main function was to adjust one's state of mind. In any case, one's state of mind was a very important factor that could affect a person's work, studies and so on. If one's state of mind couldn't be adjusted, it would most likely turn into depression. Nowadays, many celebrities had died bearing this kind of psychological pressure. They were usually regarded as pretentious and fake. When these people needed care the most, they silently endured all kinds of violence and buried their pain in their hearts. Thus, in this situation, companionship was a very important factor. But the real dream of the mind had a very big drawback, and that was that Wang Ling didn't know what he would do in the dream, including what had happened. After the dream, he would completely forget everything. The real dream of the mind was a spell that could help teammates adjust their state of mind and treat depression. In the dream, Wang Ling mostly reflected what the master of the dream wanted him to look like. He would appear in the dream in the form that the master of the dream wanted him to be, and help the master of the dream recover his state of mind. As for last night's dream, Wang Ling didn't remember it at all. If it was a prophetic dream or an ordinary dream, Wang Ling would definitely remember it 100%. It was only in the case of the real dream of the mind that he would forget the dream. Dog 2 had been lying on the ground the whole time and wagging its tail. It looked at its little master Ling with a strange expression in its eyes. For some reason, it felt that little master Ling's cheeks were very, very red, as if someone had pinched them. But Face couldn't help but sigh at this scene. It could be assumed that little master Ling was also at this age, when he was full of vigor and vigor. Although this guy usually didn't speak or even smile, as his closest pet, Dog 2 had already figured out his little master's temper like the back of its hand. Therefore, it guessed that its little master must have had a sultry dream last night. Chapter 894. Thursday, August 24th. It was the 11th day of the summer break. The preliminary results of the interrogation of the dark network assassin, Kong Rui, who had broken into Audiobook's staff apartment were already out. At first, Kong Rui vowed not to confess, and was very, very stubborn. Warden Liang and Audiobook looked at each other and smiled. Without saying anything else, they directly sent Kong Rui to the mahjong room. In less than 5 minutes, Kong Rui had confessed to everything he had done. But there was a limit to what Kong Rui knew. The only clue Kong Rui knew about the employer who had spent a lot of money on Audiobook's hair was the bank account number from which the money had been transferred. Audiobook had someone check it, and discovered that it was a foreign private bank account. It was an international bank, and they had no right to access the other party's personal information. Warden Liang, Kong Rui's dark network is very expensive. Brother Zhua, you have to be more careful from now on. I don't know why the other party wants your hair. Could it be for a DNA paternity test? Do you have any nouveau riche great-grandfathers or great-grandmothers abroad? Audiobook broke out in a sweat. You're thinking too much, old Liang. I was born and raised in Hujian. I grew up carefully under the care of my family, and I never left the house. It was only because of my good grades that I was admitted to Songhai City that the school here made an exception. Could it be some kind of enemy? Or a crime you committed as a child? I'm not sure about an enemy. I definitely wouldn't have an enemy when I was a child. Our Zhua family's group motto is not to go out at night. My parents always scared me when I was a child, saying that if we Fujian people went out, we would be caught and eaten by the people of Hedong. Speaking up to this point, Audiobook's expression was a little helpless. But speaking of enemies, it was hard to say whether or not he would have any now that he was on the job. As the saying went, a tall tree attracts the wind. Audiobook understood this principle. He had been in the limelight in the last few months, shouldering a lot of blame and provoking a lot of eyes and ears. There were always people who envied and hated him, who wanted to drag him down and kick him when he was down. There were a lot of people like this in society, and most of them weren't straightforward. Like snakes, worms, rats, and ants, they couldn't see the light and could only hide behind a rock to be a lowly fence-sitter. And he had seen more and more of these types of people since taking over at the general administration of 100 schools. He knew who these people were, but he always pretended that he didn't care. He knew that if he showed the slightest displeasure, he would fall into the trap of these despicable people. Who was investigating him? What did they want his hair for? Audra felt that he had to keep an eye on this matter. At noon that day, Fatty Luo brought him good news. The initial forging of Jinka's scabbard was a success. In order to create a suitable scabbard for Jinka, Fatty Luo had gone through a lot of trouble just gathering the materials. He had suffered a lot for the 1,000 dried bone. But to synthesize equipment, collecting materials was always a troublesome matter. At this time, he had to bring out the perseverance of the Monster Hunter players and the hard-working spirit of the Onyx Soul players. Fortunately, the result wasn't too bad. Fatty Luo's success rate in making the scabbard was surprisingly good. He had made a total of 3 custom-made scabbards for Jinka, each made of the same material but slightly different in size. In the afternoon, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal personally came to Fatty Luo's shop to take a look, and found that the doorsill was gone. It was only later that he learned that Fatty Luo had torn down the doorsill of his own shop because it had been made of Amateus wood, the main material for the 3 scabbards. I remember that Amateus wood is a great treasure passed down in Brother Luo's family. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stunned by Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. For my Lord Jinka, this little sacrifice is nothing. Fatty Luo waved his hand with an unperturbed expression. Come. Senior Immortal, please take a look at these 3 scabbards. He opened a rectangular box, which contained Jinka's scabbard. Fatty Luo proudly introduced them. The first scabbard is the little family Jasper Amateus scabbard. The mouth of the sword is designed with a Type-C interface. If Lord Jinka wants to put it in from the front, it doesn't matter if he wants to put it in from the back. The second scabbard is the Silky Enjoy Amateus scabbard. This scabbard is made of Amateus wood on the outside, and 1,000 dried bones and lubricating stone on the inside. When Lord Jinka puts it in, he will experience a noble feeling, like a moisturizing facial mask, and will enjoy the silky smoothness of the scabbard to the fullest. The third scabbard is the Virgo Compact Amateus scabbard. The mouth of this scabbard is on the small side, which gives Lord Jinka the feeling of wanting to resist but also welcoming. When Lord Jinka stabs it in, the protruding thread inside the scabbard is also a big selling point. Furthermore, the thread inside changes every day, so Lord Jinka won't feel bored. Fatty Luo said. Then what does the third scabbard have to do with Virgo? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help asking. Calling it Virgo just sounds more civilized. As long as you remove the word Virgo, it's actually a lot easier to understand, Fatty Luo answered. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was so startled by the design of these 3 scabbards that he almost dropped his melon seeds. Fatty Luo's words froze him in place for a long time. He really didn't know how to feel about these 3 scabbards, so he could only change the subject and ask the next question. As expected of Brother Luo. These 3 scabbards are all good, but they seem to be different in size. Is there anything special about them? There's nothing special about them. These 3 scabbards were made for Lord Jinka, but I don't know what he likes. But I don't know Lord Jinka's preferences. Some sword spirits like looser scabbards to be more comfortable, while others like tighter scabbards. It's just like wearing Durex. I wonder if Senior Immortal likes to wear loose ones, tight ones, or super thin ones. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo was lost in his masterpiece. Ever since I met Lord Jinka, I've fallen deeply in love with him. Being able to make a scabbard for Lord Jinka is already my life's greatest wish. Now that I've made this scabbard, I don't know if Lord Jinka will like it, but I have no regrets. But I think that no matter what, Lord Jinka will definitely be able to sense my feelings, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wiped at his sweat. He didn't want to dampen Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. Maybe. Brother Jinka will be very moved when he sees it. Of course he will. Fatty Luo's lips curled up. I designed these 3 scabbards so that Lord Jinka will be so comfortable that he won't want to come out. Maybe he won't even want to move once he's in the scabbard. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version, M. Chapter 895. Although these 3 scabbards weren't to Wang Ling's liking, in the end, they were Fatty Luo's sincerity. Wang Ling couldn't directly refuse him, so he entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to deliver them to his house. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal arrived at the Wang family's small villa that day, a rare sight that only appeared once in 100 years. The old man, Mother Wang, and Father Wang were all sitting on the sofa watching the same TV series. It was a TV series about a fight in ancient times. Do you know or don't? It's you who attack and I take. The TV series told the story of 3 cross-dressing bigwigs who returned to their mansion after undergoing sex reassignment surgery in Thailand, where they fought openly and covertly in order to find a good man to marry off. Because of the bizarre plot, winding plot, and complicated emotional lines, it attracted a lot of young men and women, as well as uncles and aunties, and had become a phenomenal piece of work for the past month. It even looked like it would surpass Yanxi Palace strategy and Rui's legend from a few months ago. Seeing this scene, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that the coffin of Wei Ying Luo, the new lightning Dharmaraja who had attracted heavenly lightning to kill the old concubine, was probably going to collapse soon. After they entered, Mother Wang didn't have time to entertain them at all. The TV series was on, and it was an acquaintance, so she told Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to help himself in the small villa. Little Lei. The tea is in the kitchen. If you want to drink it, make it yourself. Just treat it like your own home. I've also brewed the broccoli wine for you. It's in the basement. If you want to drink it, go get it yourself. Unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time, Mother Wang had already thoroughly regarded Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal as one of her own. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was overwhelmed by this invitation. Although he was now famous as the #1 true venerated in the world, he was still just a little brother in the Wang family's small villa. Now that these 3 old seniors were sitting on the sofa watching a TV series, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered it deeply. What kind of TV series could attract these 3 old seniors, who had seen through the world of mortals and lived ordinary lives in seclusion in the suburbs? To this extent, it was worth thinking about. When I go back today, I'll finish watching this TV series. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal made up his mind. The truth was that the TV series was only halfway through, but ever since the Office of Strategic Deception's rise, more and more film companies had come to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to cooperate with, planning to rent some of the office's scenes for filming. It was for this reason that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's phone now had the contact information of a lot of big shots in the film and television company. If he wanted any TV series resources, he could just ask for them directly. By the time the toilet lid was cut for half an hour every day, it would be too late. There was no end to comprehending the heavenly Tao. Moreover, it had to be done quickly, the faster the better. Brother Ling. Before they went upstairs, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shouted. With his penetrating gaze, Wang Ling saw Grenade-throwing going upstairs with 3 condoms in his hands. Actually, this was the scabbard. However, Fatty Luo's introduction of the 3 scabbards was too dirty, and people couldn't help but think the wrong way. Wang Ling felt that he had still been a pure person before entering number 60 high school. Now, he was being led astray by others. Almost every class had a few dirty demon kings. For example, in their grade 1, class 3, the biggest dirty demon king was Dopey Gua. Apart from gossiping, this guy's biggest hobby was driving. Moreover, he would brake suddenly for no reason, catching people off guard. When they entered the room, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the scabbard on Wang Ling's desk and saw that Wang Ling was looking up some information. What is Brother Ling looking for? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Little Master is looking for information on scabbards, woof. Lying on the floor, Dog 2 yawned lazily. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, as expected, Brother Luo's 3 scabbards aren't good enough. Little Master said it wouldn't be good to undermine his confidence, so he still accepted them, woof. Speaking up to this point, Loopy Toad sighed. Actually, it's not a problem with the scabbards. Fatty Luo even took out his family's ancestral Amateus wood, which shows how much effort he put into this. But it won't be easy to get Lord Jinka to stay quietly in the scabbard. If you don't believe me, take a scabbard and try it on. Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. He casually pulled out a tight scabbard and tried to approach Jinka, but in the end, he felt a strong resistance. Forget putting it on, he couldn't even get close. See? Dog 2 said, Lord Jinka is used to being naked, so he's not used to having a scabbard on him. His relationship with the scabbard is like skinny to a pokeball. You can't force it. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, Dog 2, but Little Master Ling also said that Lord Jinka's true power can only be unleashed with a scabbard. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, why aren't you saying woof anymore, brother dog? Dog 2, F***K woof. I've been a dog for so long, and I still think it's more comfortable to say gua. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, finding a scabbard for Jinka wasn't something Wang Ling had done on a whim, but had been planning for a long time. He had planned to take advantage of his free time during the summer break to get this done. No matter how custom-made or remodeled a sword scabbard was, it definitely wouldn't be as good as the original. Fatty Luo had custom-made the scabbard using Amateus wood as the main material, but these scabbards could only be used as spare tires at most. What Wang Ling wanted to find for Jinka now was Jinka's original scabbard. As everyone knew, Jinka was a peachwood sword that Father Wang had bought at the Flower and Bird Market for 998 HNY. It was just that Jinka hadn't awakened at that time. Jinka's origin had always been a mystery. Wang Ling had quietly investigated a lot of clues over the years, but could only roughly confirm that Jinka was the Lord of Sword Spirits, while he knew very little about Jinka's origin. Even those sword spirits who called Jinka Lord Sword Master didn't know why they had to prostrate themselves before Jinka. According to the testimony of the sword spirit of Evil Sword God's heaven-cleaving sword, Evil Sword God's fear at the time had been completely subconscious, like a knee-jerk reaction. When he had sensed Jinka's formidable power, the words, Lord Sword Master, had slipped out of his mouth for no reason at all. Thus, for those sword spirits, it was like an ordinary citizen of a kingdom kneeling in salute to the king. Everything had seemed so natural. At that moment, Wang Ling was using Book of Sage Immortal to flip through some information. It was information from 10 years ago. Father Wang couldn't even remember when he had bought Jinka back then, he didn't even have the receipt, and could only remember a rough outline. Thus, Wang Ling could only use Book of Sage Immortal to search for information on Father Wang's visit to the Flower and Bird Market. He wanted to investigate the origin of this Flower and Bird Market, as well as the stall owner who had sold Jinka back then. He would start from the source and help Jinka find his scabbard. Chapter 896. August 26th, Saturday. It was the 13th day of the summer vacation. Ah Chua was in an unusually good mood today, because he had received an invitation from his chief Shifu Wang Ling to accompany him to the Flower and Bird Market from more than 10 years ago to look for clues about the scabbard. Wang Ling had already pretty much investigated the person who had sold the scabbard back then. There were stall numbers in the Flower and Bird Market, and the shop that had sold the scabbard back then was still in business today. Ah Chua drove with Wang Ling. As soon as they entered the door, they saw a silk banner saying, 10 years of gold medal shop, hanging on the door of the old shop. The Flower and Bird Market had undergone a lot of changes in the last 10 years, and for this shop to be able to stay afloat for 10 years, it could be said that it had its own ability. Wang Ling followed behind Ah Chua. He was wearing blue tracksuits with a hoodie, and he had his hands in his pockets expressionlessly. He looked unhappy, but in fact, this was his normal behavior, and Ah Chua was already used to it. The way to tell if his Shifu was angry or not was very simple, he just needed to see if his dead fish eyes had shrunk. If they did, then he was angry. If he wanted to ease his anger, he had to prepare crispy noodle snacks. For every micron that his eyes shrunk, he could use a packet of crispy noodle snacks. He couldn't give too little, and he would get arrogant if he gave too much. Ah Chua felt that he was the only one who could restore his pupils to normal levels. Is the boss here? Ah Chua was still wearing his usual work uniform, looking like an elite. Welcome, what would you like to buy? Our boss just went out to buy some stuff, and will be back in a moment. I'm Ling Huan. The person serving them was a shop assistant. Odd Zhua and Wang Ling were the first customers of the day, and Ling Huan smiled very happily. Wang Ling scanned the shop and realized that it was a shop that specialized in selling exorcism magic artifacts. There were all kinds of exorcism magic artifacts on the walls and in the cabinets. Wang Ling still remembered that at the beginning of the semester, Teacher Pan had taught them the basic techniques of summoning and exorcising spirits in Teacher Pan's Tao Talismans class. But whether it was summoning or exorcising spirits, what they had learned was just the tip of the iceberg. In Golden Core universities, there was a specialized exorcism major, and summoning and exorcising spirits were both specialized courses. We're an old shop in this flower and bird market. We specialize in exorcism, and we're honest. Let me give you a brief introduction. The shop assistant, Ling Huan, was very friendly. He pointed at the counter at the front. Do you see the peachwood sword, yellow talisman, wooden fish, and candles in this glass counter? This was used by the king of corpse controllers, Mr. Zhengying, and he bought it from this shop. Although it's an obsolete product now, our shop still buys it back at a high price and displays it here as a treasure of our shop. For sale. Odd Zhua raised his eyebrows. Not for sale. Ling Huan shook his head righteously. The treasures of the store are not for sale. 10 million. Odd Zhua raised one finger. Ling Huan took a deep breath. WeChat, or Alipay? Wang Ling, Odd Zhua, where's your integrity? Ling Huan sighed and said with some resentment, in this day and age, it's all for the sake of making a living. If we don't have integrity, how can we survive? Other than the boss, you're the only one in the shop. Asked Odd Zhua. He couldn't bear to dampen this shop assistant's enthusiasm, so he took out 500 HNY and stuffed it into Ling Huan's pocket. Ling Huan's enthusiasm was ignited once again, and his tone changed. Ha ha ha. Indeed, it's just me, and I'm just looking after the shop for the boss. But I've been working for a long time. I'm the only shop assistant in the shop. Our boss is pretty busy, and usually has to do exorcism as well. Odd Zhua nodded and directly took out a photo of Jinka from his pocket. Have you seen this peachwood sword? 10 years ago. I bought it from your shop. Ling Huan's expression instantly turned serious. 10 years, it's already past the warranty period. Our shop has a uniform rule that products can't be returned for 10 minutes after they've been sold. If it's damaged by accident, we also have to provide proof. Proof that it was damaged by accident. Wang Ling and Odd Zhua sucked in breaths at the same time. Profiteer. Odd Zhua, I'm not here to return it, I just want to ask about the origin of this peachwood sword. Since it was sold by your shop, do you know where it came from? When we bought it back then, it didn't have a scabbard, and we want to find clues about it. Is that so? Ling Huan breathed a sigh of relief, but then he frowned. 10 years ago, our shop didn't have the habit of giving serial numbers to our products. Back then, everything we bought and sold was done by hand. 10 years ago, a peachwood sword like yours was a hot seller for exorcism. Back then, Mr. Zhengying created a trend for peachwood swords, and a good peachwood sword could fetch a sky-high price on the market. Do you still have that handwritten copy? I want to check it out, Odd Zhua said. Unfortunately, there was a big fire in our shop 5 years ago, and all the handwritten purchase lists were burned. Ling Huan spread his hands and looked carefully at the photo Odd Zhua had provided. But although this peachwood sword is old, we should still have some in our old warehouse. If you want, I can look for it. 998 renminbi for one. Odd Zhua asked. That was 10 years ago. Ling Huan said, now it's 990 renminbi for one. Wang Ling, Odd Zhua, Ling Huan, after peachwood swords were phased out, they're now toys for early childhood education, and are basically sold to kindergartens as educational products. They're used to cultivate interest in spirit swords for middle and upper kindergarten children. While Ling Huan was explaining the situation, a middle-aged uncle with mushroom hair stepped into the shop at that moment. He was very tall and looked like a giant bear when he stood up, and his shadow directly covered Wang Ling, boss. Ling Huan greeted the huge shadow. Seeing that the boss had returned, Odd Zhuo was just about to ask him about the situation, when the boss's expression changed drastically when he saw him. Damn! Cop! Odd Zhuo! Wang Ling, then, the boss brandished his arm like a steel cannon and punched Odd Zhuo in the face. Need help? Wang Ling stared at Odd Zhuo and spoke indifferently telepathically. How can I need Shifu's help for such a small matter? Odd Zhuo snorted and took a bow stance. The veins in his body vibrated like earthworms, and streams of spirit energy burst forth from his body to actually condense in the air into a giant raccoon. Raccoon licking dog limitless fist. The raccoon made of spirit energy stuck out its tongue and blocked the boss's fist with its tongue alone. Wang Ling stared at the raccoon in a daze, and couldn't help clapping on the side. This self-created fist technique was truly wonderful. Chapter 897. It had to be said that Odd Zhuo's wings had really hardened. This marvelous, raccoon-licking dog limitless fist left Wang Ling in a daze. After coming back to his senses, Wang Ling was in a great mood, and felt that the gloom of being bored at home during the summer vacation had been completely dispelled by this move. But there was still no expression on his face, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or sad. It could only be said that Odd Zhuo was indeed his disciple. He was indeed a promising talent, and it wasn't in vain that Wang Ling had taken him in as a disciple. Realizing that his fist had been blocked, the boss had a startled expression on his face. He had attacked first, but the other party had reacted with lightning speed, and before he could fully exert his strength, his attack had already been neutralized. Odd Zhuo's real fighting strength actually wasn't as strong as the boss's, and it was purely thanks to Wang Ling updating his equipment last time. The leather gloves that Odd Zhuo was wearing now looked ordinary, but they weren't. Wang Ling had made these gloves from the leather of his genuine leather sofa, which had also been enchanted. After enchantment, the leather sofa's skin had the ability to automatically regenerate, so Wang Ling didn't mind cutting off a piece to use as leather. But it took time for the leather to grow back, so Wang Ling could only cut off a piece from an inconspicuous spot, otherwise he would have been hit by Father Wang's punch. The boss broke out in a cold sweat. He had always been very impulsive, and although he hadn't succeeded in punching Odd Zhuo, he knew that he had attacked a police officer. He stared at Odd Zhuo with a grave expression. Tell me, cop, how much do you want? Is there some misunderstanding between us? I'm not here for money. Odd Zhuo felt that the boss definitely had some misunderstanding about him, and had actually directly called him a cop. I know I was in the wrong, I was too impulsive just now and attacked a police officer. I'll pay you however much you want, we can settle this privately. The boss rubbed his fist. Odd Zhuo sweated. I'm not a police officer, it doesn't count as attacking a police officer. This person looked like he knew Odd Zhuo, but his understanding of him was a little off. You're not a police officer. The boss didn't believe him. He looked Odd Zhuo up and down with a suspicious expression. You were the one who defeated the Demon King in the Demon Rampage 6 years ago, weren't you? You were the one who caught the old devil a few months ago, weren't you? The biggest dark force, Immortal Mansion, fell into your hands, and you were also the key to Evil Sword God's capture. I've seen you on TV before, so I can't be mistaken. Wang Ling, Odd Zhuo, for a moment, Odd Zhuo felt that he had no way of explaining himself. First of all, he really wasn't a police officer, but, human, he was indeed the one who caught them. Odd Zhuo dropped his forehead into his hand and felt that he couldn't explain this matter. There were too many unexplainable things these days. This was how the Yellow River was washed yellow. Sorting out his messy thoughts, Odd Zhuo said awkwardly, I'm not a police officer. I work for the General Administration of 100 schools, which is part of the Education Department. I'm not here today to pick a fight, I just want to ask about a peachwood sword sheath from 10 years ago. After saying this, Audra showed the screen of his cell phone. Staring at the screen, the shop owner thought that there would be more photos of the wooden sword, so he swiped through the screen with his finger and suddenly saw a photo of Audra with a custom-made humanoid doll, which looked exactly like the other youngster in the shop. In a daze, the shop owner seemed to understand something. He quickly swiped the photo back and pretended that he hadn't seen it. In this day and age, knowing too many secrets could kill a person. The shop owner took a deep breath and quickly changed the subject. This sword was indeed sold in my shop. I still remember it. This is the peachwood sword that sold for 998 HNY back then, right? Both Wang Ling and Audra were stunned by the shop owner's amazing memory. This was already more than 10 years ago. Audra, boss, are you so sure? Ling Huan said that all the receipts in your shop had already been burned. I can't be wrong. 10 years ago, we were operating on a shoestring, and I made this sword myself. Although the receipts have already been burned, I still remember the pattern on the wooden sword. Looking at the photo, the shop owner's thoughts were a little melancholy. Back then, this was a token of love that I gave to my fiancée. After giving her the sword, I planned to propose to her 3 days later by the Pubei River, but she didn't keep her promise. Not only that, she never showed up again. Wang Ling and Audra were silent. It seemed that this shop owner was another man with a story. The shop owner, I remember very clearly that she didn't keep her promise, so I looked for her for a very, very long time. In the end, I gave up. Back then, I sold this sword because I was disheartened, which was why it was so cheap at 998 HNY. This sword was made of solid wood, and it was probably the best one from back then. Back then, peachwood swords sold like hotcakes. To save on wood costs, those merchants started to make hollow peachwood swords and fill them with sand. Wang Ling and Audra, speaking up to this point, the shop owner returned the phone to Audra. Why are you asking about this sword? We want to know the whereabouts of the scabbard. I took the scabbard back then. My fiancé was a carpenter. She made the scabbard, and I made the sword blade. Together, we created this peachwood sword. This is our mutual token of love. Do you want to buy the scabbard back? The shop owner waved his hand. After so many years, I still haven't found any news of my fiancé. There's not much point in keeping the scabbard with me. I can even give it to you. But there's a prerequisite. Audra smiled faintly. Let's hear it, boss. Because of poor management, my shop is about to close down. You know, my shop number 83 is the oldest in the entire flower and bird market. The shop owner said sadly, this is the foundation left behind by my ancestors, and I can't give it up so easily. So I signed up for the new exorcism convention. The prize money is enough for me to expand this shop 20 times and renovate it 100 times. Audra, so. There are as many experts as clouds in this year's exorcism convention. My chances of winning are very low. I want you to attend the exorcism convention with me. Since you were able to apprehend the old devil, the master of Immortal Mansion and that evil sword god, I don't think you're too weak. Saying this, the shop owner looked at Wang Ling, that pretty boy behind you is your disciple, right? Young people can't be too bad at martial arts. Then let's attend it together. There are exactly 4 people signing up for the exorcism convention. The 4 of us will be perfect. Wang Ling, Audra, you haven't asked for the boss's name. Jean Ku. Jean as in gold, Ku as in section chief. Chapter 898. When the shop owner gave his name, Wang Ling realized that fate really was a very magical thing. When different people's fates were intertwined, sometimes it was really predestined. When he had named Jinka, he hadn't known what the shop owner's name was, he hadn't expected it to sound homophonic. A comedian who looked like a tea egg had once loudly berated him on a show, homophonic jokes cost money. After confirming with the shop owner Jean Ku and Ling Huan that they would form a team of 4, Boss Jean began to explain the general outline of the modern exorcism competition and things to take note of. The two of you aren't in our line of work. Although you've more or less heard about the exorcism competition, I think you're still lacking in the details, so I'll give you a brief explanation. Mr. Jean took out his notebook. There was a PowerPoint slide in his notebook. He had done it a few times in the past to recruit his teammates. Teams of 4 were required in each exorcism competition, and they had to find their own teammates. Boss Jin's ranking in the previous competitions hadn't been very good. Although he had found a demon, he hadn't been able to destroy it in the end, and had instead helped someone else. The full name of the exorcism competition is the Modern Exorcism and Spirit Exorcism Competition. The world we live in gives birth to new demons and monsters every year. These things are either formed from resentment or complicated negative emotions. They reside in the human world and constantly affect people's normal lives. Boss Jean said, now that we live in a time of national cultivation, a foundation establishment high school student can easily take care of some earthbound spirits and simple malicious ghosts. Many professional exorcists gradually declined, which is how the exorcism competition came about. The prize pool for the exorcism competition increases every year. All participants in the exorcism competition must form a team before the competition begins. If there aren't enough people, you'll have to explain the situation to the competition team. Must there be 4 people? Chua asked. It's best if there are 4 people in each team. Boss Jean frowned and said, because the demons to be exorcised in the exorcism competition are very powerful. People can die. At least one of the 4 people will be a medic. Wang Ling and Chua, speaking up to this point, Boss Jean slid down the PowerPoint. Every year before the exorcism competition, the exorcism competition committee will collect abnormal reports from major cities half a year in advance and compile them into data. They will list out the demons that are recognized as the most difficult to deal with in the form of a list. These demons will also have different reward points according to their difficulty. The final settlement would be based on the team as a unit. After 48 hours, the one with the highest score wins. Mr. Jean had introduced the general situation. In the end, it came down to the most practical question, which was the bonus. The prize pool for this year's exorcism competition was 1 billion. This amount of money might not mean much to many cultivators who had received it, but for the vast majority of them, 1 billion was still a lot of money, and even Wang Ling's heart itched at the sight of it. But this prize money wasn't destined to be Wang Ling's. The Wang family had 3 rules. He couldn't use any power beyond the scope of his students' abilities to win any prize money. Otherwise, Father Wang wouldn't have to work so hard writing novels, and would have become the world's richest man long ago, but he didn't lose anything. After all, working with Mr. Jean this time was a win-win situation. Boss Jean wanted to maintain the legacy of his ancestors, and Wang Ling's goal wasn't the prize money, but Jinka's original scabbard. This year's exorcism competition. The team with the highest score would receive a prize of 600 million yuan. The team with the second highest score would receive a prize of 200 million yuan. The team with the third highest score would receive a prize of 100 million yuan. The remaining 100 million yuan would be distributed proportionally to the remaining teams based on their ranking. Staring at the list, Chua pondered for a bit, then asked Boss Jean, can I still sign up for the competition? You can. You can sign up before the competition officially starts. But why do you ask? I'm wondering if I should get some of my friends to form a team and take the top 3 spots. Boss Jean wiped at his sweat. There are so many experts in this exorcism competition. Even if your friends come, they might not have the upper hand. After all, they aren't professional exorcists. Basically, all the teams are guided by a professional exorcist, who then use other methods to recruit the other 3 members. It's just ghost hunting. Everyone who went to university has more or less studied this subject, Chua said. A so-called professional exorcist is just an extra qualification certificate compared to an ordinary person. As the saying goes, a random punch can kill an old master. As long as the lineup is strong enough, nothing is impossible. In any case, the money you get in the end will all be yours. What's there to be unhappy about? Boss Jean opened his mouth, but in the end swallowed his words. He felt that Audjua was being a little too careless. Although he was indeed very strong and had captured a lot of internationally wanted criminals, there was a saying that every profession had its own specialties, and the path of exorcism was definitely not as simple as one might imagine. Because the exorcism competition covered the entire country. After the competition started, all the teams had to look for ghosts on the national map and then annihilate them. So in previous competitions, sometimes the most difficult thing wasn't to annihilate the ghost, but to find the ghost. If you couldn't even find the ghost, what kind of guy would win the competition? What was more, these powerful ghosts were all intelligent, and would be too cowardly to come out when they encountered a powerful person. And at this time, they needed a professional exorcist to hold the fort. Professional exorcists had thousands of tricks up their sleeves. Luring demons and ghosts out was also one of their major professional skills. It's up to you. I just want to get into the top 3 anyway. Although Boss Jean didn't think much of Audjua's suggestion, he still waved his hand and let Audjua do as he pleased. In fact, Audjua wasn't doing this entirely for Boss Jean. Although the Office of Strategic Deception hadn't been established for long, basically all the teams had been busy with their own things, and there didn't seem to be any team-building work. Thus, it was very important to hold a competition to adjust the atmosphere between the major members of the company and cultivate teamwork. Thinking this, Audjua directly called Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. A few minutes later, all the members of the Office of Strategic Deception received instructions from Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to divide them into groups. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Dog 2, Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo were in a group. Fang Xing, Little Silver, Salian Jinren and Immortal Toya formed a team. His goal was to take the top 3 spots. On the other side, what Wang Ling didn't know was, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji also signed up for the competition. However, the 3 of them were determined not to look for other teammates. They planned to play by themselves. Chapter 899. Sunday, August 27th. It was the 14th day of the summer break. The exorcism convention would officially start on August 28th, which was tomorrow. After Audjua's team had been formed last night, everyone had agreed to register for the pre-competition team registration. Songhai Modern Exorcism Center was a building that looked like an ostrich's egg, and the location had been chosen very carefully. It was said that 1,000 years ago, a great ghost who had wreaked havoc in the human world had been annihilated at this exorcism center. That great ghost was prone to taking human form, and its most common disguise was as a pipe repairman. It had a special hobby of eating mushrooms, and its crime tool was a wrench. At that moment, Wang Ling and the others appeared at the entrance of the exorcism center. Wang Ling raised his eyes lazily and saw a wrench stained with green blood in a glass cabinet in the center of the exorcism center's reception hall. This was the tool that the great ghost had used back then. But for some reason, Wang Ling felt that it was familiar. Because of his work, Audjua had actually been to the exorcism center before. When he had still been the deputy director, several small leaders who worked at the exorcism center had called him over to ask for help with their children's schooling. But rather than saying, ask, it was more like blackmail, and their tone had been very unpleasant. They had even taken gifts and insisted that Audjua accept them. Audjua was a man of integrity, and absolutely wouldn't accept this kind of shady deal, so he had refused the parents' request on the spot. Back then, he still remembered how flustered and exasperated these small leaders had looked when he had left the exorcism center, and had even said that they would entrust friends from other departments to impeach him and remove him from his position. Who would have thought that the tables would now turn, and he would be promoted to director, and also Huaxiao Alliance's representative at the United Nations General Assembly. These small cadres from back then were no longer a threat to him at all. But it had already been a long time since that incident, and Audjua guessed that these people had probably already been transferred out of the city, worried that he would retaliate. They waited at the entrance for a while, and a moment later, the two teams led by grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Fang Xing arrived. But there was a tacit understanding that they didn't talk to each other, and after confirming that they had arrived, they walked into the exorcism center together. Their mission was to take the top 3 spots. It would not be good if others found out that their teams were related to each other. Thus, before this trip, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared masks for everyone, including Wang Ling and Odd Zhua, to hide their appearances. Fatty Luo had worked through the night to make this mask. He had even added an anti-see-through layer to prevent outsiders from perceiving them with their ocular powers. The only thing that couldn't be hidden was Loopy Toad. Although Loopy Toad was also wearing a mask, it was no use, that eye-catching green fur was too eye-catching. Coupled with that wagging dog tail that couldn't be hidden, Wang Ling felt that dog too didn't even need to wear a mask, but then again, Loopy Toad had been cultivating very hard recently. He should be able to transform into a human in a short period of time. Who knew what Loopy Toad would look like when it took on a human form? In fact, it was normal to wear a mask in every exorcism competition. This was because the vast majority of people competed in small groups led by professional exorcists. Many of the cultivators in the teams were hired by the exorcists as temporary workers. Naturally, there was a need to protect one's identity. Another reason was that the exorcism competition's prize money was huge, and it was reassuring to do a good job of protecting one's identity. This mentality was like wearing a mask to receive the prize after winning the lottery. In front of the registration counter, Boss Jin's thick arm was stretched across the counter, and his voice was loud and magnetic. "I'm here to sign up. Our team, 4 people." Boss Jin wasn't wearing a mask. He was an exorcist of the older generation, and was well known in the circle. "Boss Jean, you're here to sign up again." The lady at the front desk in charge of registration was also a veteran employee of the exorcism center. She smiled when she saw the information Boss Jean had submitted. This document contained the personal information of the 4 of them. Of course, the entire registration process was confidential. As the lady at the front desk checked the information, her slender fingers flew over the keyboard. But when she entered the 4th person's information, she was stunned. Because this was Wang Ling's information, underage. The lady at the front desk raised her head and stared at Boss Jean. For a moment, countless people around them looked at her strangely. "Boss Jean, according to the exorcism center's regulations, underage people can't participate. Unless they have permission from their parents or the relevant authorities." "I know." Boss Jean looked at the lady at the front desk and wiped at his sweat. "Please check the information carefully again." The lady at the front desk rummaged carefully, and in the end found that there really was information. Furthermore, it was signed by the General Administration of 100 schools. It even had the official seal of the General Administration of 100 schools. "Ah. Sorry. I didn't see it just now." The lady at the front desk hurriedly got up and apologized. A few minutes later, everyone's information had been entered. The lady at the front desk handed the information back to Boss Jean with both hands. "I wish you all a successful exorcism. Later, you will receive the latest exorcism ranking list on your cell phones, and you can discuss which demons and ghosts you want to eliminate. The Exorcism Center will send all the arrangements to your cell phones in the form of text messages. The official start time of the competition is tomorrow at midnight. Boss Jean, please lead your team and get ready." "Thank you." Boss Jean nodded. Just as he was about to collect the information, an exorcist led his team over from a distance. This was a middle-aged man who was about the same age as Boss Jean. He had a very large mole on the tip of his chin, and a few black hairs were particularly conspicuous on it. This man also wasn't wearing a mask. One look and you could tell that he was a veteran exorcist. "Long time no see. How are you, Boss Jean? You lost the exorcism conventions one after another last year, and I thought you didn't have the face to come this year." As soon as this person spoke, a lot of people instantly turned to look at him. "It's Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang. The runner-up in the last exorcism competition." It was obvious that this Mr. Fang was very famous here. A lot of people started to talk. Listening casually, Wang Ling realized that Boss Jean and this Mr. Fang also had a grudge. Last year, Boss Jean had been ruthlessly used by this Mr. Fang. He had found a ghost, and just as he was about to get rid of it, it had been suddenly stolen. After all, Wang Ling hadn't been involved, and didn't know what had happened last year. He didn't want to care. In any case, it was fine as long as he helped Boss Jean win the competition this year. Boss Jean couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this Mr. Fang, and just pretended that he hadn't seen anything as he directly walked out. But just as he took a step forward, he was stopped by Mr. Fang again. Mr. Fang chuckled with a provocative expression on his face. I heard earlier that there's a minor in Boss Jin's team this year. I didn't expect our Boss Jean to have fallen to the point where he has to hire child labor. As soon as he said that, before Boss Jean could reply, several powerful spiritual pressures were already pressing down on Mr. Fang from the history room. There were spiritual pressures from grenade throwing, Fang Xing, Little Silver, Loopy Toad, Odd Jua, Immortal Toya, Cyan Jinren. This was a set of spiritual pressures from every member of the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, after hearing Mr. Fang's provocation, everyone in the Office of Strategic Deception had the same attitude. They could be summed up in 7 words: those who insulted the group's favorites would be killed without mercy. Chapter 900. It wasn't just Mr. Fang, even Wang Ling himself hadn't expected everyone's reaction to be so surprisingly uniform. At first, everyone had just wanted to put on a show of strength and intimidate Mr. Fang with a little spiritual pressure, but who would have thought that everyone's spiritual pressure would instantly stack on top of each other, directly causing Mr. Fang to foam at the mouth and faint on the spot. What an unlucky kid. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. But then he realized that his focus wasn't right. He felt that he should pay more attention to when he had become the group favorite, spiritual pressure shock injury. On the other side, the emergency medical staff who had rushed over from the exorcism center wiped at their sweat. Spiritual pressure shock injury was the most difficult type of injury to identify, so this Mr. Fang who had been shaken down could only count himself unlucky. The competition hadn't even officially started, and a strong contender for the championship had already been knocked out on the spot. Boss Jean was an impatient person, and was the kind of person who would use fists and feet to solve problems if he couldn't explain things clearly. This could be seen from the way Boss Jean had swung his fists at Odd Jua as soon as he had entered. He actually wasn't a bad person by nature. Boss Jean had offended a lot of people over the years because of his bad temper, and Mr. Fang was one of them. This had directly sowed the seeds of disaster for Boss Jin's loss in the competition last year. Mr. Fang was very vengeful. He had wanted to repeat his old trick this year and watch Boss Jean steal his kill, but he never expected to be sent straight to the hospital because of his cheap mouth. It would take at least half a month for him to recover. But after Mr. Fang's actions, the other people in the exorcism center who had thoughts about Boss Jean also curbed their thoughts. This year, Boss Jean was full of fury. The members of this small team looked much more reliable than those 3 who only knew how to watch the show last year. After registering at the exorcism center, Boss Jean gathered everyone for a meeting in the shop in the afternoon. The attractive group had sent Fang Xing as their representative, while the human beast group had sent Dog 2. Note: Human beast group, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, Dog 2, Dharmaraja, Fatty Luo. Attractive group, Fang Xing, Little Silver, Cyan Jinren, Immortal Toya. Boss Jean didn't know Fang Xing or Loopy Toad, so when they appeared at the door, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. Since they could come to the meeting as representatives, they should represent the combat power of the other 2 groups, but no matter how he looked at it, store manager Jean just didn't seem reliable. Fang Xing was too young, sunny, handsome, and simple-minded. It wouldn't be easy for him to deal with those cunning demon ghosts. As for the green-furred dog on the other side, even if it was a spirit beast, it hadn't even transformed into a human, so how strong could it be? Could it be that he was using it as a prop to show off? Boss Jean muttered to himself before taking his seat. Thank you for attending today's meeting. The main purpose of today's meeting is to distribute combat tasks. When Boss Jean spoke, everyone, including Wang Ling, was playing with their phones. Boss Jean was already used to this situation. After all, this was basically the case in all gatherings of friends these days. Friends were sitting together, but all of them were looking at their phones. Mobile phones, which carried a sense of guilt, had already added a barrier to communication between people. Many people didn't even know how to chat without their phones. At that moment, in the office of Strategic Deceptions Core Management Group, everyone was chatting animatedly. ID, dog who longs to be stroked by little master, dog 2, it's a good thing everyone isn't here. This meeting is so boring. I'm so sleepy. ID, I love broccoli, grenade-throwing senior immortal, sorry to trouble you, brother dog, to attend. After all, Boss Jean is the commander of this operation. For the sake of Lord Jinka's scabbard, let's be patient. Also, we have to give Boss Jean face and not dampen his enthusiasm as a commander. How's the meeting going now? ID, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's fanboy, Fang Xing, Boss Jean is now talking about the exorcism ranking list. This year's strongest devil, codenamed Pen Spirit, will be directly rewarded with 1 million points after killing it. Pen Spirit often appears in the Funan region, and its exact location has yet to be decided. Boss Jean says it's very ferocious and difficult to hunt down. It can hide its spirit body in any pencil, and is extremely secretive. It can kill with a pen without a sound. Devil number 2, Man-Eating Pigeon. Reward, 800,000 points. Rumor has it that this big guy was on a date with his girlfriend back then, but she stood him up. He was so angry that he died, and his resentment accumulated to become a devil. This year, more than 100 couples have already died at the claws of man-eating pigeons. Devil number 3, Lemon Essence. Reward, 500,000 points. According to Boss Jean, lemon essence has a powerful corrosive ability, and can even easily disintegrate the bodies of soul formation cultivators. It's really amazing. ID, I love Master, Little Silver, so these 3 devils are stronger than the prison mahjong trio? ID, Shifu is mine, Odd Jua, of course not. Most of the devils selected for the exorcism competition in previous years are very difficult to find, as they're too secretive. But to tell the truth, these 3 devils might not even be strong enough for Shifu to slap them in the face. Don't you think so, Shifu? Wang Ling didn't look at what this group of people was saying at all. He just stared at their IDs and was lost in thought. Any devil had its own fixed targets and habits when it committed crimes. For example, the people it had killed the most this year were high school students at the foundation establishment stage. Actually, it wasn't very strong overall, but it excelled at being secretive. The reason why it was at the top of the list this time was purely because the parents of the high school students who had been killed by it had joined forces to report it, pushing this notorious devil to the forefront. Fang Xing had already said in the group that man-eating pigeons' fixed targets were couples. But to be more specific, they were couples who openly showed off their affection in public. Finally, the lemon essence's fixed targets were successful people in society, and they would especially pick on soft persimmons to bully. For Wang Ling, these 3 devils were boring challenges. If it wasn't for Jinka, he wouldn't even bother to make a move on them. In Shop 83, Boss Jean looked at the time and said, "It's almost midnight. I've already booked tickets to Funan, so we can set off now. It's half an hour from here to the airport. The plane leaves at 2 in the morning. That brush spirit is very hard to find. I heard that a team has already arrived in Funan. We have to hurry." Next to Boss Jean, his shop assistant Ling Huan was already ready. He had all kinds of exorcism magic artifacts on him. However, the group in front of him didn't move at all, and continued to stare at their phones. "What are you doing? Listen to orders." Boss Jean was anxious. Still, no one said anything. Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the time on his phone. There were 5 more seconds until midnight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moment the clock hit midnight, Boss Jean received a text announcement from the exorcism center on his phone. The devil at the top of the exorcism list, Brush Spirit, has been killed. Killing Team, Team Jean Ko. 1 million points awarded. Boss Jean stared at the text message with a stupefied expression. Chapter 901. Roughly 10 minutes ago, Boss Jin's meeting had just ended, and it was 10 minutes until midnight. Wang Ling had a rough idea of the locations of these 3 devils, and had Book of Sage Immortal search for them as quickly as possible. Since enlightening Book of Sage Immortal, Wang Ling had realized that it was indeed a great help when it came to searching for information. But this thing could be spared the death penalty, but it couldn't escape punishment. Wang Ling still remembered how he had sold his own limited number of crispy noodle snacks to help Immortal Toya buy tickets. So after he found Jinka's scabbard, Wang Ling still had to give this tablet away. If he kept it by his side, it would be a disaster sooner or later. A few seconds later, Book of Sage Immortal transmitted Pen Spirit's location. As Boss Jean had said, Pen Spirit was in the area around Funan, and it was currently committing murder. In the conference room, Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell of the 3,000 great spells to quickly arrive at Pen Spirit's location. This was a boy's room. Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell to appear behind this boy, but the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware. Because Wang Ling was currently in his spirit body state. Even people from the domain of the gods like Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi wouldn't be able to see Wang Ling's spirit body state, let alone a high school student. The Great Soul Shift spell could be regarded as an advanced out-of-body spell that could teleport a soul to any location in the world. But a spirit body couldn't stay out of the body for too long, and would automatically return to the body after 15 minutes. But this was enough time for Wang Ling to get rid of Pen Spirit. This wasn't a difficult enemy to deal with to begin with, it was just that it was hard to find. At the desk, the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware that he had already been targeted by the female ghost. Pen in hand, he stared at the book and seemed to be racking his brains for a topic. Nan Nan. Nan Nan. The voice of the little brother's mother came from outside the door. She knocked first, then turned the doorknob and placed a plate of fruit next to the little brother. Seeing that her son was studying seriously, the mother smiled kindly. Study well. Nan Nan. Tell me what you want to eat. I know, the little brother replied coldly. The little brother replied coldly. Although he was looking at the book, he was sizing up his mother from the corner of his eyes. After his mother left, the flat-top little brother heaved a sigh of relief. Flipping through the book in his hand, Wang Ling realized there was actually a trap in this platform little brother's thick revision materials. That's right. A rectangular pit. The young man had placed his phone in the pit. As long as someone came by, he would close the front page of the book, and when there was no one around, he would flip it back. Wang Ling broke out in a sweat. This little brother was really going through a lot of trouble to play with his phone. He glanced at the name written on the young man's revision materials, Lin Nan. He was currently in his 3rd year of high school. The college entrance examination for foundation establishment high schools was held in October after the summer vacation, which was somewhat different from ordinary high schools. Therefore, as long as it was the summer vacation of the 3rd year of high school, the vast majority of children in foundation establishment high schools wouldn't have a very comfortable time. Putting aside the practical subjects, there was still too much theoretical knowledge waiting for them to review, and their parents usually kept a close eye on them. It was very obvious that this flat-top little brother was afraid of being nagged by his mother, which was why he had played a trick and hidden his phone in his revision materials. He wasn't taking his studies seriously at all. Wang Ling stared at Lin Nan and sighed in his heart. Play when it was time to play, and review when it was time to review. Only by striking a proper balance between work and rest could one learn more efficiently. But even so, Wang Ling wasn't Lin Nan, and it wasn't appropriate for him to comment too much. After all, everyone's situation was different, and if you weren't someone else, you shouldn't easily judge someone else. Wang Ling was very curious as to why Lin Nan had gone through so much trouble to hide his phone. Shifting his gaze, he saw that Lin Nan was talking to his father on the phone. Wang Ling saw a text message. "Dad, don't gamble anymore. Come back, Mom needs you. I got first place in my grade in the final exam, and the school specially approved a super panacea for me. As long as I sell it, I'll definitely be able to pay off your debt. As long as you promise me that you won't gamble anymore and come back to Mom to apologize, I'll sell that super panacea." He was waiting for his father's message. But his father still hadn't replied. Wang Ling's emotions were a little complicated when he read this message. At that moment, Lin Nan, who had been waiting for his father's reply, suddenly felt a chill run through his body, and he couldn't help shivering. Lin Nan picked up the air conditioner remote control on the table and glanced at it. The room temperature was currently 25 degrees Celsius. It shouldn't be that cold. But what was with that chill he was feeling? At that moment, Lin Nan didn't know that Pen's spirit had already locked onto him. In the ballpoint pen in his hand, a dark spirit body slowly extended out. It was a long-haired female ghost dressed in a red dress. She wore high heels, and the spirit that flowed out from the pen slowly gathered behind Lin Nan. Lin Nan could feel a chill on his neck, but he did not know the reason for it. When the female ghost stretched out her long nails, which were covered in red polish, toward Lin Nan's neck, Wang Ling slowly raised his hand and pressed it down on the ghost's shoulder. "You're Pen spirit, right?" Wang Ling cocked his neck and spoke telepathically. The female ghost in red was so scared that her hair stood on end. She hadn't noticed that there was another person standing behind her at all. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. "You." The female ghost turned her head in disbelief, but she was so weak that she couldn't even see Wang Ling's spirit. However, the female ghost was very sure that there was someone behind her. Moreover, this person's hand was already one step ahead of her and was strangling her neck. "Let go," Wang Ling said coldly. This wasn't a discussion, but a pure order. Helpless, the female ghost could only withdraw her claws and raise her hands in surrender. "What kind of ghost are you?" "I'm the Crispy Noodles ghost." "Crispy Noodles ghost?" Pen's spirit was stunned. She had never heard of this guy before. "Why did you harm him?" Wang Ling continued to speak telepathically. He felt that he had never spoken so much in his life before. But Wang Ling himself was really curious. His gossipy heart was now purely because of that guy Dopigua. "If he doesn't study hard, of course I'll kill him," the female ghost said righteously. Wang Ling was shocked by this reason. "Also, before I kill him, I'll help him finish all his homework. I'll make everyone who doesn't study hard feel ashamed. I'll make them go to hell with regret, and..." Bang! Before Pen's spirit could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already squeezed her neck until it exploded. What a boring battle, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He glanced at Lin Nan. Before leaving, Wang Ling did something else. He cleared out all the homework that Pen's spirit had written for Lin Nan, his own homework. Write it himself. Chapter 902. All the exorcists in the exorcism competition were stunned by Wang Ling's quick action. They could see that Boss Jean was on a roll this year. Without competition from Mr. Fong, Boss Jean indeed had the potential to compete for the top 3. But the competition had just begun, and the biggest boss, Pen's spirit, had already been eliminated. This caught everyone off guard. This Pen's spirit was known as the most difficult malicious ghost to find in all these years. So, the other side had already confirmed their position long ago, and were crouching next to Pen's spirit, waiting for the competition to start and then directly eliminate it. But before everyone could recover from their astonishment, another system announcement came from the exorcism center. Team Jean Ku has broken the record for killing the devil at the top of the leaderboard. The time taken for this kill is 0.001 seconds. Note, the previous record was 12:21:44. This kill is valid. We also welcome all exorcists to bravely break the record. When the exorcists in various parts of Huaxiao saw this kill record, they all threw their compasses and exorcism magic artifacts to the ground with a Pia. F***K. Isn't this a scam? 0.001 seconds. This is breaking your brother-in-law's new record. At the top of the exorcism center, President Yang Hua was on duty in his office. The giant screen in front of him was marked with all kinds of red dots, which were the exorcists who had been assigned to various regions to capture devils. When the news of Boss Jin's kill arrived, President Yang Hua was also puzzled. This had been too fast. And there was no possibility of cheating at all. President. I've already investigated the members of Boss Jin's team. Standing next to Yang Hua was a female secretary who had just investigated some information. These 4 people have very ordinary backgrounds and identities. One of them is a minor. We're still verifying the details. The truth was that when Audiobook had submitted his identity, he hadn't submitted his real identity information for fear of causing trouble. Only the age was correct in the identity information on it. In order to make his fake identity look more authentic, he had deliberately kept Wang Ling's age and added a minor to the team. You can check the information on that minor. The female secretary, that youngster's surname is Gone and his first name is Crispy. Yang Hua was blank. Why is there such a surname? What's his relationship with Gan Jiang? The secretary replied, I don't know. Okay. Then you can investigate further. If you really can't find anything, you can call Boss Jean and ask for more details. This is very important to us. The prize pool for this year's exorcism competition has exceeded all previous ones. It's all for the sake of finding a powerful exorcist who can complete one task for me. At this point, Yang Hua fell silent. The appearance of Boss Jin's team rekindled President Yang's hope. The secretary nodded. All right, Mr. President. I'll get back to work first. Yang Hua instructed, pay attention to your privacy. Huaxiao Alliance absolutely can't know about this. The female secretary, yes. This subordinate will be careful. President Yang Hua sighed in his heart as he stood in front of the French window. Some time ago, because of a mistake in the exorcism center, they had accidentally loosened the seal on a 10,000-year-old devil, and in a few days, this devil would be reborn. He didn't have much time left. If Huaxiao Alliance found out about this, he might not be able to keep his position as president of the exorcism center. On the other hand, in Manager Jin's shop, Manager Jean received many congratulatory messages and messages from people. Old Jean. Who on earth did you recruit as a member of your team? Can you let me know? Or maybe we can work together next year. I can invest in that shop of yours. Dear old Jean. Congratulations, you've killed the pen spirit. I've already asked you in all sincerity, so can you tell me in all sincerity who on earth is in your team? In an instant, Manager Jean received almost 100 text messages with the same content. All of them were asking about the team members and congratulating them in passing. Manager Jean sighed and felt that this scene was a little surreal. Previously, when his shop number 83 was about to close down, he had tried to borrow some money through his contact list, but none of them had replied at all. Now that the situation had changed, these people had suddenly become opportunists again. Boss Jean, aren't you going to reply? Audiobook asked. He saw that Boss Jin's phone had already entered ghost animal mode since the news of the kill had spread. The text messages hadn't stopped since the beginning, and the phone screen kept flashing and then going off. Looking at these messages, Boss Jean was clearly a little distraught, and he directly turned off his phone. Thank you very much for this time, Boss Jean said to Audiobook and the others. Boss Jean said to Audiobook and the others, as for the remaining 2 devils ranked 2nd and 3rd, Boss, are you talking about the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit? Fang Xing smiled slightly. Our 2nd and 3rd teams have already locked onto their positions. So fast, most of these devils are spirits. As long as they're strong enough, there's no need to use a magic compass to locate them. You just need to sit at home and use your aura to get a rough idea of where they are, and then you can search for them. Furthermore, the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit aren't very strong, they're just at the soul formation stage. If it weren't for this team-building activity, we wouldn't even bother with such weak ghosts. Saying this, Fang Xing looked at the text, then raised his head and said, I've confirmed it. Sect leader said that a lot of exorcists are currently searching for these two devils, and told us to wait a while before we act. We don't want them to have a bad gaming experience and have a mental breakdown. Boss Jean and his assistant Ling Huan's jaws dropped when they heard this. This bunch of people, who on earth were they? They had thought that Odd Zhuo of the General Administration of 100 schools was already ridiculously strong, and had never expected that his friends would also be freaks. Coming back to his senses, Boss Jean wiped at his sweat. In any case, thank you very much. Also, I've already texted her about the scabbard you're looking for, and she's on her way. Boss Jean, what do you mean? Actually, I never told you before. The scabbard of that peachwood sword also gave birth to a weapon spirit, and it's a very beautiful girl. I've always raised her at home as my daughter. Everyone, little scabbard is already on her way, you'll see her in a bit. She's usually more of a homebody, but I promised her that I'd buy her a game with my bonus, so she agreed to come over. Everyone and Wang Ling. Chapter 903. It was only then that Odd Zhuo realized that they seemed to have been tricked by Boss Jean. Previously, Boss Jean had repeatedly emphasized that the peachwood sword's origin was a token of love between him and his girlfriend, and had completely avoided talking about the scabbard nurturing a weapon spirit. Odd Zhuo had thought that it was only because of the token of love, which was why Boss Jean had such a deep impression of the peachwood sword. After all, it had already been 10 years. But now they finally understood that this Boss Jean had been hiding a mistress in his golden house. For a moment, the room fell silent. About 10 minutes later, a white-haired girl wearing the Lu Ban skin of number 1 game pushed open the door and entered. In the end, Wang Ling saw this Miss Scabbard. She took off her hat, her eyes empty and lifeless, and the snow-white ahogue on the top of her head straightened up like a sharp sword. At first glance, Wang Ling felt that he and Jinka did indeed look like a married couple. She was about 15 years old, and a little older than Jinka. She had developed quite well, and was in all the right places, and was the right size. Dad, let me tell you something. I'll only give you 10 minutes. You can't go back on your promise to buy me a game disc. As soon as she entered, the girl sat down in a random chair with a straight face, then crossed her arms and stared at the people in front of her. She swept her gaze over Dog 2, Fang Xing and Odd Zhuo one by one before finally fixing it on Wang Ling. After observing him for a while, she nodded. No wonder Dad's exorcism convention went so smoothly this year. These guys are indeed a lot better than last year's. Goods, the corner of Fang Xing's forehead twitched visibly. It was one thing for her to call him Goods, but she actually dared to call Wang Ling that? Odd Zhuo wiped at his sweat and felt that this Miss Scabbard really had a fiery temper. What powerful spirit power, Dog 2 thought inwardly. Boss Jean wasn't lying to them. This girl was indeed a weapon spirit, and Dog 2 could sense that the spirit power structure of a weapon spirit was rather special. But Dog 2 had to admit that this was the first time it had seen a weapon spirit in human form, because in most cases, a weapon spirit preferred to stay in its original body. This was because a weapon spirit would consume a lot of its spirit power in its human form. But this Miss Scabbard didn't seem to care about this at all. Or perhaps it was better to say that her human form didn't seem to have any spirit power restrictions. What was going on? Buttface was quite confused. Let me introduce you all. This is my daughter, Jean Baiqiao. Boss Jean wiped his sweat as he introduced her, seeming very helpless about his daughter. But Miss Scabbard frowned, as if she was very unhappy with Boss Jin's introduction. How many times have I told you? My surname isn't Jean, it's Baiqiao. Dad, please correct your position. Don't casually add a surname to me. The only reason I call you Daddy is because the name you signed on the contract is Daddy. Everyone, Boss Jean was rendered speechless by Fang Qi's retort. After a long moment of silence, Odd Shuo was the first to break the silence. Given Miss Bai Qiao's fighting strength, if she participates in the exorcism convention, she will definitely help Boss Jean get a good ranking. This was the truth, as well as the legendary boast. After all, this was the first time they had met, and in Odd Shuo's understanding, it was necessary to say something nice to make people feel comfortable. But this Miss Bai Qiao didn't buy it. She stared at Odd Shuo and chuckled. Given my strength, it's naturally easy for me to take care of those low-level devils, but they aren't worthy of me taking action. As for you, I know you're called Odd Shuo, right? The one who's been on TV a lot lately. Odd Shuo was delighted. Miss, do you know me? Of course I do, you're the king of scraps. You can fool other people, but you can't fool me. Bai Qiao stared at Odd Shuo and snorted. But I can't be bothered to expose your little tricks. Well, water doesn't interfere with river water, and exposing you won't do me any good. You have a lot of fans now. If I expose you online, I'll be flamed. Odd Shuo, this second retort caused Odd Shuo to fall silent. Dog 2 couldn't take it anymore. This girl had a sharp tongue. It felt that as a loyal dog, it was time to show off the literary skills it had accumulated in the human world. Who didn't know how to insult people? But before it could speak, Bai Qiao stared at Dog 2. You're that demon king from 6 years ago, right? Not long after you fell down, you were punched through the stomach, and now you've turned into a spirit dog, neither a demon nor a dog. You think you've learned some human culture in the human world, and you want to cause trouble here? You stand alone in collusion, you walk alone, enlightened. You don't even know how to sing the song, Rare Words, do you? You, Buttface burst into tears and shut himself in. After rebuking the third king, Bai Qiao then turned her gaze to Fang Xing. You're quite capable, but you're still lacking compared to me. I know you, immortal Shipai's son. Daughter? It's really giving birth to a child. Odd Shuo, Dog 2 and Fang Xing were stupefied. Could this girl be the legendary woman who had read the script? Finally, Bai Qiao's gaze turned to Wang Ling. Don't think that I won't dare insult you just because you have a pretty boy's face and fierce dead fish eyes. Pretending to be very weak and putting on a poker face, who are you trying to show off? Don't you know how strong you are? All the strong people have gone to save the world, but you're still in high school. Wang Ling, people say you copied Nano Chi Mu. Why don't you dye your hair pink and put a lollipop in your hair? So what if you got a talisman on you when you were little? Who are you showing off by sealing the 3000 heavenly Tao? Destroy the world if you have the ability. Don't quibble. I don't know you very well, but gossip is a fearful thing. You were in a stroller when you were born. You copied someone else's settings, and you still won't admit it. Wang Ling, forget about being in high school, there aren't many lines in the book. You can clearly speak, but you insist on using telepathy to make yourself look very low-key. So what if you know the 3000 Great Tao? So what if you know how to cultivate? So what if you're omnipotent? You're just a guy who likes to peek behind the scenes and stir up trouble. So what if you send ellipses? I can do that too. Wang Ling. I can't take it anymore. This is too much. Buttface couldn't stand it anymore. He clapped his paw and stared at Manager Jean. Can I hit your daughter? Boss Jean smiled bitterly. Everyone, please go ahead. As soon as he said that, Fang Xing, Odd Shuo and Dog 2 all lunged forward. You think 3 stinky fish and shrimps are worthy of fighting me? Bai Qiao sneered. At that moment, the ahog on the top of her head shone and turned into a whip of light that swept out. Mobile version, M. Chapter 904. 1 against 3 was a situation that no one present had expected. Forget her poisonous tongue, Bai Qiao's temper was far more violent than they had imagined. That long ahog swept out like a godly whip, instantly splitting Boss Jin's shop in two. Wang Ling unhurriedly pressed down on Boss Jin's and Ling Huan's heads to help them avoid Bai Qiao's attack. At the same time, he was left speechless by this kind of indiscriminate fighting style. My shop. My merchandise. My priceless exorcism magic artifact. It was a mess in front of him, and Boss Jin, holding his head, instantly turned into a world-famous painting called The Scream. Fang Xing seized the opportunity to grab Bai Qiao's ahog. He could see that this was the key to fighting Bai Qiao. As long as he could control it, Bai Qiao wouldn't be able to do anything. You're too inexperienced to control me. Bai Qiao didn't care about Fang Xing at all, however, and snorted. In the next moment, the ahog on the top of her head actually separated on its own. At the same time, a brand new ahog grew out from the top of her head. At that moment, the broken ahog that Fang Xing had grabbed earlier was vaporizing as it gradually turned into a ball of spirit energy and disappeared. Zhuo rushed forward. He was covered from head to toe in the equipment Wang Ling had given him, and his true battle strength was stronger than his realm looked. His feet shook, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Bai Qiao. At the same time, the fingerless gloves in his hands burst forth with light as he threw them at Bai Qiao. But Bai Qiao didn't even raise her eyes in the face of such a fierce attack. Too slow. Bai Qiao swung the ahog at Zhuo, and his suit was directly torn to shreds, but he wasn't injured or bleeding. A golden light completely blocked the remaining power of Bai Qiao's ahog. After the golden light dissipated, Bai Qiao saw Zhuo in bright red long johns. Just as she was amazed at the strong defense of the long johns, Dog 2 lunged at her from the other side. Basic dog skills. Hit. Loopy Toad was merciless. After a long period of cultivation, its basic dog skills had already reached the maximum level, and it could now throw 1,000 punches in a second. Bone King. The moment it used the dog skills, Loopy Toad also took out its life-bonded magic weapon and turned the Bone King into a pair of spiked gloves that were as white as jade, which it wore on its paws. For a moment, fist shadows flew everywhere, causing the air to tremble. Bai Qiao was slightly surprised at the astonishing frequency of its punches. This dog's performance was a lot better than she had imagined. It was clearly a demon king, but it was actually able to fuse with an ordinary Akita's body to this extent. Interesting. Bai Qiao smiled, and the ahog on the top of her head suddenly split into countless tiny hairs which flew out to collide with the fist shadows that filled the sky. A frightening aura and spiritual pressure emanated from Bai Qiao. Bai Qiao's expression was calm and unperturbed, and she didn't hide her insolence at all. Even when dealing with Loopy Toad, she didn't hold back at all. Like Buddha's 3,000 strands of worry, the strands of hair swung out to block all the attacks, and Loopy Toad completely lost its temper. In the end, the hair was waving faster and faster, and Buttface felt he couldn't resist it any longer. Frowning, Fang Xing's expression shook. White Knight spell. Almost instantly, Fang Xing completed his transformation, and 10 snake scales shot out to cut off all of Bai Qiao's hair. Now, Boss Jin and Ling Huan finally understood what Bai Qiao meant when she said, "Have children." It turned out this brother Fang Xing. He was a horse monkey shouju. After the transformation, Fang Xing's aura and battle strength soared to a whole new level, and Bai Qiao's expression finally changed. One punch. Fang Xing approached her so quickly that Bai Qiao was dazed. This punch smashed into Bai Qiao's body, and there was the sound of godly metal colliding. Bai Qiao was sent flying straight out of the shop. It was only at that moment that Bai Qiao's expression finally turned serious. The strongest person, sure enough, it was that youngster from inside. It was only after she was sent flying out of the shop that Bai Qiao realized that she had been dragged into a layered space at some point. This was an ability similar to the inner world, and a fight in a layered space wouldn't affect reality. None of the 3 people currently fighting her could do such a thing. The only person who could possibly use this divine ability was that ordinary-looking youngster in the shop. Because of her earlier mockery, Bai Qiao had a rough idea of Wang Ling's identity, which was inextricably linked to her. But Bai Qiao realized that she had still underestimated Wang Ling's strength. The moment the fight started, he had actually pulled everyone in the shop into a layered space. Furthermore, he had done it so silently that even Bai Qiao hadn't sensed it. Bai Qiao kept an eye on this kind of extraordinary ability. Qi. At that moment, Fang Xing, who had cast the White Knight spell in her goddess of war form, took out the 40-meter-long saber from the crack in her chest. When the saber was drawn, the blade shone with an astonishing light as it slashed down with powerful spiritual pressure. Bai Qiao took a deep breath, and the ahog on the top of her head split into two to turn into two giant hands that caught the 40-meter-long saber firmly in midair. However, this spiritual pressure was so enormous that Bai Qiao's body couldn't stabilize in the air, and she sank a little. But this didn't put Bai Qiao in a desperate situation. She used all her strength to move the 40-meter-long saber away. Fang Xing was stunned to find that the ahog's attack had actually cracked the saber. It's over. Bai Qiao smiled indifferently at Fang Xing, and at the same time, she took something out of her pocket. Fang Xing thought that the other party was going to take out some magic treasure, but in the end, he saw Miss Bai Qiao actually take out a bottle of hair conditioner that she had prepared beforehand from her pocket, and pour the entire bottle over her head. The nutrients in the conditioner were instantly absorbed by the ahog. In a split second, as everyone could see, the ahog on Miss Bai Qiao's head rapidly grew upward like a divine tree, and in the end, it actually turned into an ancient golden sword that glowed with magic light all over. Not good. Fang Xing instinctively sensed danger. This kind of spiritual pressure was so frightening that it was no longer the oppressive force of a true immortal. Fang Xing was well aware that he might not be able to withstand this sword. Even if he didn't die, he would be bedridden at home for half a month. Are you afraid? But it's too late. However, this Miss Bai Qiao had no intention of stopping at all. Whoosh! Brandishing the ahog, she chopped down at Fang Xing's head with the momentum of a deity splitting the sea, and the nearby space collapsed inch by inch. But in the next moment, Bai Qiao realized that her ahog godly sword was actually being held back by a force, and couldn't advance even an inch. At some point, a figure had suddenly appeared in front of her swordsmanship. It was a child who looked no more than 10 years old, dressed in brown clothes with a white robe draped over it. He had blocked her attack with just one small arm. Chapter 905. It's Lord Jinka. Odd Chua got excited. Everyone turned to look at the skinny figure in the sky. As always, the legendary Lord of Sword Spirits displayed his formidable battle strength. With just one arm, he blocked an attack that even Fang Xing, who was in her goddess of war form, had to admit would be hard to resist. Below, Boss Jean and his employee, Ling Huan, were completely dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why this group of people could eliminate the brush spirit the moment the exorcism convention began. That was a power on a completely different level. Boss, don't talk, I need to calm down. At that moment, Boss Jean and his employees were both taking deep breaths. Jinka's appearance in the air stunned Bai Qiao's arrogant and despotic face. She frowned and secretly exerted force, but found that her ahog divine sword couldn't advance even an inch. This child's strength was astonishing. Judging from its aura, it didn't seem to be that strong. Go away, I don't hit children. Bai Qiao stared at Jinka with a strange feeling in her heart. She was formed by heaven and earth and born of the sun and moon, so she had the power to know everything in the world. This was why Bai Qiao had the guts to lash out and ridicule everyone when she came to the shop. But in the entire process, there were two people she couldn't completely see through. One was that youngster called Wang Ling. Although her venomous tongue sounded a lot, it was in fact all on the surface. Bai Qiao didn't fully understand this youngster. And now, there was another troublesome character here. It was the child who had suddenly appeared in front of her. Bai Qiao could vaguely sense the connection between the child in front of her and her. But she didn't want to admit it. She was used to being free and undisciplined. The human world was rich and colorful, and there were so many games that she needed to play. She didn't have time to play house with a child. Follow me back. Jinka stared at Bai Qiao, and his languid tone was the same as usual. He clearly had the body of a child, but there was an unquestionable sense of dominance in his tone. Bai Qiao sneered. Don't order me around. I have a lot of games to play today. There was still much to see. My favorite author, Ku Xian's new book, The Only Koi in the Cultivation World, is going to be published today. I still have to hurry to subscribe for him. Look at him cross-dressing. Everyone present was dumbfounded when they heard such an ample reason. But in the face of this arrogant and resilient otaku, Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest from beginning to end. His gloomy gaze gave Bai Qiao goosebumps all over. It was said that spirit swords took after their masters, and Bai Qiao could see that this child looked exactly like its master, who was watching the show from below. The master was not easy to deal with, and the sword spirit was not easy to deal with either. It looks like I'll have to be a little more serious. Bai Qiao sighed in her heart, and then her expression turned serious. Treasury of hairs. In the next moment, everyone saw the Ahog divine sword in the air actually split into countless fine needles. Under Bai Qiao's control, these thousands of fine needles rained down on Jinka. All this time, Jinka hadn't let down his guard. With a flick of his sleeve, a protective sword light formed in his small hand, and this attack of fine hair, which was like a torrential storm of tang-sect pear blossom needles, was dispelled by this brown protective sword light. Jua couldn't help saying, judging from Miss Bai Qiao's reaction after Lord Jinka showed up, it doesn't look like she doesn't know who he is. But every move she makes is deadly, and focuses on vital parts. Down below, Jua, Dog 2 and Fang Xing all blushed with shame as they watched. This kind of scene of domestic violence was really frightening to watch. The needles that were like a rainstorm descended onto the ground like a myriad of shooting stars, and they blasted the ground to the point it was in a complete mess and was covered in scars. Countless houses in an area of a few tens of kilometers were instantly destroyed and smashed into pieces, and it was a horrifying scene. However, this still wasn't Miss Bai Qiao's full strength. Fang Xing was well aware that this Miss Bai Qiao's overall battle strength was above that of a true immortal. And the same was true of Lord Jinka's battle strength. This was a showdown between the sword spirit and the scabbard spirit, and it would be very hard to predict the outcome until the very last moment. But while the current situation looked blurry, it was very clear who was on the offensive and the defensive. Miss Bai Qiao's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. Their auras exploded on the field, and each blast of spirit power exploded in all directions. Everything in the wake of the ripples was destroyed, and the grass, trees, and houses were all turned to dust. It was as if the end of the world had come. Their spirit power was so powerful that it directly materialized and rushed out to destroy the grass and trees. Jinka, on the other hand, was on the defense from beginning to end. What? You're not going to attack me? Miss Bai Qiao laughed wildly. Suddenly, she was enjoying the feeling of fighting a little. She had been cooped up at home for too long, and it wasn't bad to come out and exercise every once in a while. She originally didn't want to be too heavy-handed with a child, but for some reason, Bai Qiao actually felt that the more she fought, the more exciting it became. She didn't know when it had started, but she couldn't take her eyes off Jinka. As the battle progressed, a strong obsession kept lingering in her mind. Wang Ling could actually understand this kind of scenario very well. It was like when you were at school and your female desk mate kept trying to pinch your thigh. You thought she was bullying you, so you went to tell the teacher. The truth was that the girl liked you, but didn't know how to express it in words. It was like the boy in the back row always grabbing the girl in the front row's pigtails. Thus, most straight men would lose a beautiful relationship after their thighs were pinched, and now, Bai Qiao's feelings couldn't be any worse. The more she fought, the more she wanted to bully him. Ahog, throw up. Bai Qiao was brimming with fighting spirit. She extended her ahog infinitely, wrapping Jinka up in layers. Then, like a rocket, the ahog on the top of her head directly sent Jinka, who had curled up into a ball, into outer space, where it circled the earth several times in a row. In the end, he turned into a meteor and crashed down hard. Not good. Fang Xing realized that things weren't looking good. If this meteor crashed down, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. But at that moment, Jinka's aura finally emerged, and a powerful gravitational force came from the dumpling wrapped in a hog. Everyone had no time to react at all. On the other side, Bai Qiao was already sent flying with a blood-curdling ayah. When everyone came back to their senses, Bai Qiao's two pure white legs were already firmly on Jinka's shoulders. Ah Jua, this is Jinka assassinating King Qin. Dog 2 didn't quite understand. But Miss Bai Qiao isn't the person with the most hair. No, Fang Xing shook his head and gave an aggressive analysis. The reason why Miss Bai Qiao's ahog can extend infinitely is very likely because it absorbs nutrients from the other hairs on her body. Thus, Lord Jinka deduces that ahog is also related to her leg hair. Furthermore, after the ahog extends infinitely, it's already longer than all of us here. All of our leg hair put together isn't as long as one of Miss Bai Qiao's ahog, right? Everyone was stunned. There was this kind of operation. Chapter 906. For any girl, it was an extremely humiliating thing to have both of her thighs carried by a man. Miss Bai Qiao was naturally the same. She already had no time to worry about the fight, and covered her face with both hands, completely at a loss. The last person who had shown this expression had been the scholarly girl by the riverbank. At that moment, their postures and expressions almost overlapped across time and space, and Wang Ling couldn't help secretly clapping his hands in amazement at the sight. It was very clear that Miss Bai Qiao had lost because she was a scabbard. As a scabbard, she and Jinka came from the same source, and her true battle strength was about the same as Jinka's. But as a scabbard, Miss Bai Qiao had forgotten her identity as a scabbard. A scabbard existed to protect the sword itself. But Miss Bai Qiao had just gone berserk from the fight, and had put the cart before the horse as she actually wanted to press the sword under her body. Jinka had no choice but to activate his passive skill, Jinka assassinates King Qin. This move had actually existed from the very beginning to limit the scabbard's strength. The layers of space dissipated, and everything nearby returned to normal. The broken world returned to normal the moment the layers of space were lifted. It was as if nothing had happened. The shattered ground and the smell of smoke from the battle had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Miss Bai Qiao hugged her knees as she crouched in a chair. She wasn't noisy anymore, and had already lost her initial arrogance. She just pulled the cap on her head very, very low, and started to sob rhythmically. Woo! Woo woo! Woo 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 woo! Woo 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 woo! Although she was sobbing, Miss Bai Qiao didn't shed a single tear. Is Miss Bai Qiao trying to say something? Ah Chua scratched his head. He suspected that she wasn't crying at all, but was trying to express something. Who would cry with musical notes? It was like Morse code. No, this was the Morse sword code. Standing next to her, Jinka translated expressionlessly. She said that she has no face to see anyone. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Dog 2, woo ah. Woo ah. Woo ah ah. She said that even if she was beaten to death, or jumped down from here, she wouldn't be my scabbard. Woo ah ah. Ah. Woo 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 ah ah ah. She said that love between an older woman and a younger man won't end well. In fact, this wasn't the first time Miss Bai Qiao had cried. She was usually like this when Boss Jean didn't buy games for her. But Boss Jean didn't understand a single word of Miss Bai Qiao's Morse sword code. In the end, despite Bai Qiao's special background, she was still a little girl. Under normal circumstances, when a young lady cried, there was usually a hidden meaning in it. However, this was not the way to go on. They couldn't get any information, and naturally couldn't understand this miss Bai Qiao's heart. The only thing he knew was that Bai Qiao still missed city life, and wasn't willing to go back to being a well-behaved scabbard. They had painstakingly searched for the scabbard because they wanted the scabbard back. But you can't use force on a girl. These were all consensual matters. Miss Bai, if you keep crying like this, only Lord Jinka will understand. You have to calm down, then tell us what you want and we'll think of a way to solve it together, Ah Zhuo said earnestly. Then, he pushed Fang Xing over. Fang Xing. Ah Zhuo said telepathically, classmate Fang Xing. Lord Jinka's happiness is also related to Shifu's happiness. Little girls like you the most when you're a man, so we're counting on you. To be honest, Fang Xing had refused at first. He was actually quite a vengeful person, and had been very unhappy with Bai Qiao's mockery of his gender earlier. The White Knight spell was his father's unique secret technique, and he had no choice but to change gender after using it. But Bai Qiao had actually used this to personally attack him, which directly caused Fang Xing's impression of this Miss Bai Qiao to turn negative from the very beginning. But Ah Zhuo's words reminded him. Swords follow their masters. Since ancient times, spirit swords and their masters had been inextricably linked. It was like the personal maids of noble ladies in ancient times. Ladies naturally had to be concerned about their maids' happiness. If their maids were doing well, the ladies would also be happy. So, this was all for Wang Ling's sake. Thus, Fang Xing took a deep breath and decided to brace himself. Miss Bai Qiao, if there's anything you're unhappy about, you can tell me. My chest is all for girls to lean on. Fang Xing flipped his beautiful blonde hair and then held out a hand to Bai Qiao in a very gentlemanly manner. After a few minutes, Bai Qiao stopped sobbing. She looked up at Fang Xing, her eyes empty. Everyone was overjoyed at this scene. It had actually worked. When all was said and done, she was still a girl. Ah Zhuo was secretly delighted. Just as he was sighing in his heart that Fang Xing was worthy of being a girl killer, Bai Qiao suddenly swatted Fang Xing's hand away. F***CKU. I don't talk to dead ladyboys. Fang Xing, I'll F***CKU, classmate Fang Xing, calm down. Ah Zhuo hurriedly stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Fang Xing's waist. Let go of me. I'm going to have a showdown with her today. Everyone knew that at that moment, Fang Xing's heart was on the verge of collapse. Everyone had their own pain. Fang Xing himself was helpless in his own pain. After all, this was something his father had left him. For a moment, the room fell into silence. Bai Qiao knew she had said the wrong thing, and buried her head in her knees again. Just as Boss Jean had said, Bai Qiao had been raised by his side all these years, and was already used to being free and undisciplined. Furthermore, it was said that this venomous tongue had been stimulated by her noob teammates when she had been playing games. So much so that her venomous tongue had already become a habit of hers. Calling her a dead ladyboy was indeed too much. But in fact, it was unintentional. She just didn't want Fang Xing to get close to her. Who would have thought that she would blurt out the word, dead ladyboy? Miss Bai Qiao, things have already come to this point, so why don't you be straightforward? What other wishes do you have? Ah Zhuo stared at Bai Qiao and said, actually, your return doesn't mean that you'll lose your freedom. You can still play the games you want. No one will restrict you. But you can't forget that you and Lord Jinka are one. Can I have any wish? Any wish? Ah Zhuo nodded. Bai Qiao raised her head and instantly perked up. I want to develop a game. Chapter 907. Bai Qiao's wish was unexpectedly unique, but it wasn't impossible. After the exorcism convention, Boss Jean received a huge bonus. He was exceptionally good to his wild daughter, even if in Bai Qiao's eyes, this daddy boss gene was nothing more than a tool for her to enjoy herself. After discussing the conditions, Bai Qiao and Wang Ling signed a new agreement. As long as Wang Ling could fulfill her wish to develop a game, Bai Qiao was willing to return. But now, there was another problem. Everyone here was made for playing games, not making them. Not only did games need to be creative, they had also been progressively stricter in recent years. A lot of new games couldn't even get approval from the relevant departments, and in the end ended up rotting in the hands of the game companies themselves. The result of such a huge investment was that the game couldn't even be sold. For a moment, game companies large and small in the market were in a predicament. Thus, the problem was what type of game to make. The MOBA games that had always dominated the top of the list were dominated by large game companies such as Horse Goose and NetHard. If they developed a similar type of game, it would be very difficult to get a slice of the cake from these game companies. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the game was really excellent, small game companies couldn't compare to these established companies in terms of server operation and maintenance alone. Once a large number of users poured in, the servers would most likely blow up. But Bai Qiao already had her own ideas about game design. If a new game wanted to find its place in the monopolized game market, creativity was the key factor. It was August 29th, the 16th day of the summer break. Wang Ling's room was unprecedentedly lively as a lot of people came. Wang Ming, who had been oppressed in the lab by Zhai Yin for a long time, also came, but it wasn't Wang Ming himself, but the long-range mecha armor he was controlling, Wang Ling too. After the last trip to Beast King's remains, the newly developed Wang Ling 2 had already been upgraded and improved on the basis of Wang Ling 1. Not only could it be controlled remotely for combat, it could also be recalled with one click to merge with the original body. The most important thing was that Wang Ling 2 had basically turned into an artificial intelligence and had its own consciousness. In other words, Wang Ling 2's function was now infinitely close to that of the high-level clone, Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch, which Wang Ling had created with the Great Separation spell, and its memories would also be synchronized with Wang Ming's brain. The only difference was that Wang Ling 2's fighting strength wasn't as strong as Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's. In the room, Dog 2, Jinka, Little Silver, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling 2 formed a circle around Bai Qiao. "Tell me about your design first, then leave the rest to me," Wang Ling 2 said, the synthesized voice of the virtual human with Wang Ming's distinct voice. "I want to design a sandbox cultivation simulation game with a high degree of freedom." At the mention of the game, Bai Qiao's expression lit up, and her eyes lit up. "I'm going to call this game, Cultivation Simulator. The characters, spells, cultivation techniques, magic artifacts, including the world itself, can all be designed on their own. What the players have to do is not to manage the characters, but to manage the entire world. They have to consider the balance of the various forces in the world and maintain the order of the world itself, so that the world they create can achieve sustainable development. This is the key to this game." "So, the key to the game is to operate the entire world? Is there a pay-to-win mechanism?" Little Silver asked. As a fellow gaming fan, Little Silver had been living at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house for the last few months, and had played all the games on the leaderboard and all the ones that could be played with pay to win. What Little Silver abhorred the most was that Dungeon and Devils on Earth. This game's weapon-strengthening mechanism really left Little Silver speechless. He had even thrown in the money for takeout, but couldn't upgrade it no matter what. Later, Little Silver had watched videos online and realized that those who had successfully upgraded their weapons kowtowed as they did so, and used their foreheads to click the mouse to show their sincerity. Pay to win doesn't exist, this is an absolutely fair game. But in order to set up a profit point, you can make some clothes to sell. Can wearing clothes increase your attributes? For example, 10 attack points? Little Silver raised his hand and asked. No. Bai Qiao shook her head resolutely. Then what about power struggles? This will happen naturally after you design the world's parameters and basic characters. For example, you can set up how many major forces the world will be divided into, how they will be distributed, and so on. But the composition of the forces and the scale of their construction will depend on the character parameters. Each character's talent, attributes, personality, and so on. Players can freely design them from the start. In the preset world, these characters will develop freely according to their attributes and personalities, and finally form their own forces according to the preset script. All of this can't be controlled. You need to set up a good personality at the beginning. Can we set up a world without evil people? Dog 2 asked. Yes. In this free cultivation world, the players were God. If you want to set up a perfect world without evil forces, that's naturally not a problem. But whether such a world could continue to operate in the end was a problem. Everyone has heard the story of the catfish and the sardines, right? Civilization grows in strife. Without pursuit and desire to change, the world itself won't progress, Bai Qiao said. Wang Ling too nodded. I more or less understand what you mean, but sandbox games also need a template and some basic programming parameters. I need some real data to use as a reference. Right after Wang Ming said this, before Wang Ling could say anything, Book of Sage Immortal suddenly said, I've calculated that there's a 98% chance that my lord will have me find a suitable world for simulation. Wang Ling, can you do it with this heavily corrupted tablet? Bai Qiao's eyes sparkled. Yes, Miss Bai Qiao. It's very simple. Book of Sage Immortal replied. Book of Sage Immortal then projected an image of an earthy blue planet. These are the parameters of Earth from the 10th universe 600 million years ago. Now, Miss Bai Qiao, you can create your character. I'll use the current development of the 10th universe to make calculations and simulate future developments. It's not just Miss Bai Qiao, everyone else here can try to create your own characters. Let's see what kind of impact they'll have on the world in the future after they've been created. Saying this, Book of Sage Immortal turned its gaze to Wang Ling. My lord, do you want to create the first character first? Book of Sage Immortal was well aware that its master was, after all, Wang Ling. Giving its lord priority in creating a character was equivalent to giving him face, and there was a 78% chance that he wouldn't smash it. Chapter 908. Funding and setting up a server weren't a problem. As for the specific design of the game, Wang Ming would rearrange the structure and algorithm of the entire game based on the parameters recorded in Book of Sage Immortal's simulation experiment. This was just a game. Over the years, Wang Ming had created so many strange magic treasures, and even the humanoid magic treasure Head of State 001, which was used in battle, had been created by him. The difficulty of designing these scientific cultivation magic treasures was far higher than that of a game. After confirming the general direction, the simulation experiment became the most important factor. Wang Ling stared at the image projected by Book of Sage Immortal and fell into deep thought. To be honest, he still hadn't thought about what kind of person he wanted to build. At that moment, Wang Ming, who was remotely controlling Wang Ling too, suddenly said, It seems that Ling Ling is still thinking. Should we redefine the world first? What kind of world is the 10th universe? Book of Sage Immortal replied, There are subtle differences between each universe, and cultivation civilizations are uneven. But most of them have already entered the era of national cultivation. The era of national cultivation. This phrase sounded very lofty, but if one were to look back tens of thousands of years, this was simply unimaginable. The first person in the universe to discover the existence of spirit chi and turn it into spirit energy to embark on the path of cultivation was the father of cultivation. Rumor had it that the father of cultivation was also the discoverer and developer of the 3,000 great spells. However, historians had always held different views and debated endlessly who the father of cultivation was. A small number of historians even believed that there was no such thing as a father of cultivation at all. Cultivators had existed since the beginning of the universe. But they were a very small group of high-level people who kept a low profile and passed on the art of cultivation from generation to generation. It wasn't until the study of cultivation gradually expanded bit by bit and the ranks of cultivators continued to grow that the world finally entered the era of national cultivation after tens of thousands of years. In fact, both theories had their own arguments. Wang Ming, on the other hand, believed in the father of cultivation. Above true immortal was true venerated, above true venerated was venerated immortal, and above venerated immortal was Tao venerated. Then what about above Tao venerated? Could there be a higher realm? In that case, could the person with the strongest realm be the legendary father of cultivation? Or perhaps this father of cultivation wasn't the father of cultivation at all. Perhaps he could also be called an immortal king? Wang Ming smiled. Since the 10 universes have already entered an era of universal cultivation, can we establish a world with very few cultivators? This question caused everyone present to be stunned. A world with few cultivators? What does Brother Ming mean? He asked. It's a world dominated by ordinary people. Cultivators only occupy a very small proportion of this world. Moreover, there is an agreement among cultivators that they cannot reveal their identity as cultivators in front of ordinary people. If they violate the agreement, they will suffer the wrath of heaven. Wang Ming said, "Everyone, just think about it. If such a world existed, wouldn't cultivators living in the cracks eventually replace ordinary people and lead the world into an era of national cultivation?" So, this is another spiritual energy revival theme. No, the spiritual energy of the world has always existed, and so have the cultivators. What I want to know is, if 99% of the people in the world are ordinary people and only 1% are cultivators, will this 1% completely replace the other 99% in time? Wang Ming said. This question caused Wang Ling's room to fall silent for a moment. It was Miss Bai Qiao who suddenly laughed. She hadn't thought about this before. As a sandbox simulation game with a cultivator as the theme, Cultivation Emulator allowed players to freely create a world of cultivators, and indeed allowed for this kind of situation. Who said that cultivators had to be the dominant force at the beginning of the world? Bai Qiao thought this proposal was very interesting. This sounds like a very interesting world. In any case, it's just a simulation. Maybe we can give it a try. Then, let's try to set up the parameters of the world. So, is this the world I imagined? Wang Ming also laughed. That's right, the parameters of the world have to be designed from the very beginning. For example, the ratio of cultivators to ordinary people, the ratio of men to women, the initial population of the world and so on. After the most basic parameters are set, the game officially begins. After receiving the first instruction, Book of Sage Immortal immediately started its own simulation settings. After Book of Sage Immortal compiled the parameters of the world, it displayed them in front of everyone. World, a barren world of cultivation, age of the world, for 8 billion years, ratio of ordinary people to cultivators, 99%/1%, civilization state, modern civilization, education level, 9 years of universal compulsory education, world state, peaceful development, power number, 1231, Book of Sage Immortal. Now, you can design your own characters. These people will be born in this world, but how long they can live and how much impact they can have on the world will depend on their specific applications in the world. After that, a chart of the characters' attributes appeared in front of everyone. These were the basic attributes, which could be changed freely. Furthermore, the appearances of these characters could all be set by molding their faces. Looking at Jinka's appearance, Bai Qiao made a character that looked similar, but it was a girl. It's done. A cross-dressing version of Jinka. Hiya. Miss Bai Qiao was very pleased with herself. Wow! It really looks like him. Odd Chua praised. But Miss Bai Qiao, it looks like you and Lord Jinka gave birth to you. Bai Qiao's face instantly turned red. Who gave birth to him? She grit her teeth, made the character's hair a little longer, and then added a hogue on top of the character's head. She then quickly corrected herself. It doesn't look like him. I'm molding myself. And so, Bai Qiao's character was as follows: name, Bai Ge gender, female intelligence growth, 8/10 endurance growth, 8/10 defense growth, 8/10 strength growth, 8/10 figure growth, 10/10 appearance growth, 10/10 kindness points, 10/10 evil points, 0/10 personality. Silly, why are they all 8 except for appearance and figure? Dog 2 asked. I already said that I'm molding myself, so of course I have to look like me in appearance and figure. As for everything else, I'm the best. I definitely can't be stronger than the me in other worlds. Everyone. What kind of character does Master want to design? Little Silver asked curiously at that moment. Looking at the character panel, Wang Ling had a rough idea of what to do. He started to design his own character. Name, Qin Zong. Chapter 909. The character that Wang Ling had created was a little special. Everyone looked at Wang Kun's pet character data panel. Name, Qin Zong. Gender, male. Intelligence growth, 2 out of 10 endurance growth, 2 out of 10 defense growth, 2/10 strength growth, 2/10 figure growth, 2 out of 10 appearance growth, 2 out of 10 kindness, 5 out of 10 evil, 5 out of 10 luck, 10 out of 10 personality, good and evil, Buddhist, free and easy, lively. Master has created an ordinary person. But his luck is off the charts. Little Silver thought it was interesting. When Book of Sage Immortal simulated a character with an intelligence growth of 3 or below, it would automatically classify the character as an ordinary person. The character data panel wasn't completely fixed, attributes could be added at will, and it wasn't even possible to set intelligence growth. Then, when the character appeared in the world, it would be a mentally retarded setting. Everyone had custom-made their own characters. All along, Wang Ming had longed to embark on the path of cultivation. He envied Wang Ling, so he had created a cultivator character for himself, and maxed out all the attributes he could. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had positioned himself as a great botanist, and in the zombie crisis of the future, he had successfully developed pea-shooters to fight zombies. While everyone was setting up their characters, Audiobook suddenly thought of a question. If we set up these characters and let them live according to the settings in the game world, will they awaken their own consciousness? At that moment, Wang Ming said, this is relative. For us, these people might just be a bunch of data. But as a sandbox game with a high degree of freedom, these game characters who live in it might all have their own consciousness. They might look like they're being manipulated by us, but they also live according to a predetermined way of life in their own world. It sounds a little complicated. Audiobook frowned. Then I'll make it simpler. Wang Ming said, just like when we create these game characters, we can be called gods. In that case, have you ever thought that we might have been created by a greater god? Perhaps as we speak, a pair of eyes is watching us. Suddenly, everyone in the room couldn't help shivering. F***K. You scared me. But Face felt as if all the fur on his body was standing on end. It's my fault, I shouldn't have talked about such a scary topic. Audiobook wiped the sweat from his forehead. In fact, similar scientific evidence had existed a long time ago, but now that he was looking at it again, he still felt terrified. However, the atmosphere in the room became lively because of this discussion. Looking out the window, he couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. A world created by God. Wang Ling said in a low voice. Although it was very quiet, Little Silver and Fang Xing heard it clearly. They had realized a long time ago that it wasn't that Wang Ling didn't talk, sometimes, he just didn't want to. Just like Wang Ling, who liked to peek at the screen, this was a master who was outwardly passionate on the inside. What they didn't know was that in that moment of absent-mindedness, something extremely terrifying had happened. August 29th, Tuesday, the 16th day of the summer vacation. A brand new game called Cultivation Simulator had entered the sights of summer vacation students. The high degree of freedom in the gameplay and the godly sense of behind-the-scenes manipulation very quickly attracted a group of beta players. 10,000 gift certificates for beta accounts that didn't delete their files were snapped up within a minute after it was released, and the game's popularity was comparable to that of a special sale at midnight on Double 11. Daoist Guang was very happy to advertise the game in his live stream room. After a period of development and promotion on the platform, Daoist Guang's live stream room had already become the big brother of the big brothers on the platform. The average number of people online in real time reached 30 million per minute, which was an unprecedented record. Thanks to Brother Guang for the game's promotion this time. In the group, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent a grinning emoji to express his gratitude to Daoist Guang. Brother Grenade-throwing, what are you saying? It was just a small effort. But this game is really interesting. I tried it out in the live stream room just now and saw that the number of pre-orders for the game has already broken 1 million, and this is just for a single platform. Looking at all the gaming platforms, it definitely won't be difficult for it to break through 10 million in the next few days. Daoist Guang smiled. It just so happens that the popularity of PUBG has dropped recently, and I've been worrying about not having a game to play. With the release of Cultivation Emulator, perhaps it'll create a wave. There were many factors that contributed to a game's popularity, and Cultivation Emulator's success was due to its creativity. Of course, another big reason was that it was now the summer vacation, and most of the students had nothing to do at home. In the class group, Super Chen was extremely excited. He and Dopey Guo were fanatics when it came to games to begin with. Although Cultivation Emulator didn't have a trailer, Daoist Guang's demo video had been recorded by the Light Chasers and uploaded to major video websites. This kind of publicity was already no less effective than a game trailer PV. This game is pretty good. Super Chin sent several excited emojis in the group. I was so bored that I started playing DNF. In the end, after weapon strengthening failed, all my hopes turned to dust. Weapon strengthening? How much did it cost? Dopey Guo couldn't help asking. I spent more than 10,000 a week on it. I even used up a tenth of my New Year's money from last year. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help pursing his lips. Why were all his classmates so rich? Saying this, Super Chin sighed. But I have a feeling that this Cultivation Emulator will definitely explode in popularity. In front of the screen, when Wang Ling saw Super Chen's words, he instantly knew that the game was in the bag. Super Chen, but it's so annoying. He had sent out too few private beta accounts. I tried to grab them before, but they were gone before the browser even popped up. Dopey, do you have any uncles who work in a game company? Think of a way to get 2 accounts. Dopey Guo, you don't say. I really do. Super Chen, Wang Ling, Dopey Guo, but the creator of this game isn't a company, but an independent creator. My uncle has already used his connections to ask the bosses of several game companies, and all of them said they didn't know this creator. Now, the only way is to buy back closed beta accounts at a high price, but I heard that the price has already reached tens of thousands, and it's only going to get higher and higher, ? Super Chen was amused. Don't tell me Wang Ling or his relatives made this game. Wang Ling, Super Chen, Wang Ling, I know you're looking at the screen, why don't you come out and say something? Wang Ling. Chapter 9-10. At the same time that night, on the holy pillar in the demon world, second-generation demon saint, who was observing the crystal magic ball, felt the scales all over his body explode, and a bad premonition reached the depths of his soul. With a crack, the magic ball in second-generation demon saint's hand suddenly shattered. The demon saint magical bead actually cracked. This is a great omen. On the side, Sage Master Shen Wuyue also revealed an extremely astonished expression. As a Sage Master who had assisted generations of demon saints, Shen Wuyue naturally knew very well what the destruction of the magical pillar meant. As early as the first demon saint, the magic bead had cracked once, but it was only a very small crack. The next day, the first demon saint got hemorrhoids, and when he came out of the toilet bowl was filled with the first demon saint's blood. The closest time the orb broke was when the mysterious expert who used the fishing line to connect the koan and used it to probe the different spaces appeared. Back then, the identity of the angler was very mysterious, but now, the identity of the angler was clear. It was Wang Zhen from the domain of the gods. This time, the cracks on the magic bead were even more thorough. It actually split into 8 pieces like a watermelon. This. Old Shen, what is going on? Second generation demon saint was a little flustered. He had never seen such a situation before, and fine beads of sweat instantly trickled down his forehead. Shen Wuyue stared at the shattered magic ball in silence for a while. To be honest, he'd never seen a situation like this before. Now, he could only rely on the handbook first-generation demon saint had left behind to judge the situation. Shen Wuyue hurriedly flipped through the demon saint codex from beginning to end. Second-generation demon saint watched on the side, clearly a little anxious from waiting. Second-generation demon saint, what's the situation? Shen Wuyue muttered to himself for a while and said, the pearl has 8 petals, the chrysanthemum is broken. Second-generation demon saint. For a moment, the palace at the top of the holy pillar fell into a long silence. Regardless of whether the chrysanthemum stain was real or not, what was certain now was that this was definitely a print. As long as you can't run away. If it's a broken chrysanthemum, there's nothing to be afraid of. Second-generation demon saint laughed. My lower body is a fish tail, and I don't have a chrysanthemum at all. Shen Wuyue frowned. But Lord Demon Saint must pay attention to this matter. Since ancient times, the shattering of magic beads had never been a good thing. Because the previous demon sages didn't pay enough attention to this matter, they all suffered a great calamity in the end. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a violent tremor came from the sacred demon temple. A crack appeared in the void, like a spider web. A powerful aura could be felt. Both second-generation demon saint and Shen Wuyue were familiar with this scene. They thought of the multi-fanged kun that had appeared in the palace before. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Shen Wuyue kicked second-generation demon saint aside and stood in front of him. Second-generation demon saint spat out a mouthful of blood with a pft. At this moment, a crack appeared in the void, and a 3-headed, 9-tailed firebird flew out. Phoenix? Second-generation demon saint took a closer look. Shen Wuyue shook his head. This firebird had fine teeth in its mouth, accompanied by the 7-colored 9-tailed phoenix plume. This is the primordial 3-headed phoenix. It's another extinct divine beast. Second-generation demon saint was stupefied. He had never expected that his palace would have a constitution that could attract divine beasts. Rua. Before the two of them could react, this 3-headed phoenix that had appeared out of nowhere directly opened its mouth and spewed raging fire. Rainbow divine fire. Shen Wuyue was so frightened that his hair stood on end. He kicked Demon Saint away again. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Second-generation Demon Saint was sent flying into the distance and spat out a mouthful of blood. His sternum was already broken after the second flying kick. How dare you, evil creature! Having already dealt with the primordial vicious kun, Shen Wuyue was completely fearless in the face of the 3-headed phoenix this time. He removed his antlers and threw them forward. At that moment, the antlers, which were spinning at high speed, turned into 2 boomerangs with powerful cutting power and slashed at the phoenix like chainsaws. Shen Wuyue controlled his mental power to the extreme as he manipulated the antlers on his head. These antlers were a life-bonded magic weapon that his clan had refined and were impervious to water and fire. But since his opponent was the 3-headed phoenix, Shen Wuyue still felt a little uneasy. This was Rainbow Divine Fire. Rumor had it that it was a powerful divine fire born from the combination of the Yang Heart Divine Fire in the sun's core and the power of the 3-headed phoenix clan's phoenix. Once tainted by it, it wouldn't stop until one died, and wouldn't be extinguished by any external factors until the object was completely burned out. But why is the 3-headed phoenix here? Shen Wuye couldn't figure it out no matter how he racked his brains. The three-headed phoenix this time and the primordial vicious Kun last time had both appeared so suddenly that it could be described as baffling. Their demon saint palace was about to become a rare animal protection center. Shen Wuye, this fire phoenix, at that moment, second-generation demon saint, who had been kicked twice, came to his senses and slowly got up from the ground. He wanted to ask about the three-headed phoenix, but the situation was urgent and Shen Wuye was in no mood to pay attention to demon saint. The three-headed phoenix let out a long cry and swooped down. The sound of the phoenix swept through the air with an intimidating volume. The antler boomerangs were directly shaken off their original tracks. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. The phoenix's sound can captivate one's soul. You need to seal your ear orifices. Shen Wuye roared. But it seemed that second-generation demon saint had already fallen for it. Holding his head, he swayed left and right and his steps were unsteady, as if he was performing the famous comedy skit, High Wise Dead, performed by a certain female star. Lord Demon Saint. Seeing this, Shen Wuye kicked him a third time. The current situation was critical, and using magic to dispel it would waste time. On the contrary, physical correction would have a miraculous effect. Suffering this third kick, second-generation demon saint coughed up another mouthful of blood. This was the largest mouthful of blood he had ever coughed up, and it was horrifying like a fountain. But after this third kick, Shen Wuye realized that he couldn't drag this battle out any longer, he had to end it quickly. If this went on, Lord Demon Saint would be at his limit before the three-headed phoenix was dealt with. This trash demon saint, he was clearly the one fighting, but in the end, he was the one who was coughing up the most blood. Forget it, Shen Wuye sighed in disappointment. He stared at the three-headed fire phoenix in front of him, and his expression finally turned serious. Shen Wuye rarely revealed his true form, but at this moment, the arrow was knocked on the bowstring, and he had no choice but to release it. Demon Saint's palace had now become the #1 target for foreign invaders. Where was the dignity of his majestic Demon Saint palace? It didn't matter whether there was someone behind this who wanted to deal with Demon Saint's holy palace, whether it was intentional or not. But as the sage master who had assisted first-generation Demon Saint until now, Shen Wuye felt that he had to step forward. The demon world wasn't devoid of people. And Lord Demon Saint. And he, Shen Wuye. For this reason, Shen Wuye directly swallowed the antler that he had removed earlier to use as a boomerang. The aura of a giant prehistoric beast descended, and the three-headed phoenix was so frightened that it actually dropped a few of its feathers. Chapter 9-11. Old Shen Yu, second-generation demon saint, clutched his chest. His chi and blood had been in turmoil from those kicks, and he had almost died. But at that moment, the bursting aura in the field made second-generation demon saint's fish tail tremble slightly. The scene in front of him actually caused his eyes to sink into a long trance. This was the first time second-generation demon saint had seen Shen Wuye in his beast form. Apart from the word beautiful, second-generation demon saint actually didn't know what else to use to describe the scene in front of him. Shen Wuye had grown taller, even the wrinkles on his face had disappeared, and he looked nothing like his doddering old self from before. He had become incomparably handsome. His flowing silver-white hair fell to Shen Wuye's ankles, and from his shoulders to his collarbone, there were patches of dark green scales. There was a red mark embedded in the center of his forehead like a gem, indicating Shen Wuye's current identity. Realization suddenly dawned on second-generation demon saint. No wonder Shen Wuye had been unwilling to reveal his beast form in front of everyone. Shen Wuye was the descendant of a deer qilin, a hybrid of a primordial divine deer and a primordial qilin. Since ancient times, hybrid divine beasts had never fared well with either family, and the divine beast tribes would regard them as heretics, a species that shouldn't exist. But it was an indisputable fact that divine beasts often had very powerful combat strength. But divine beasts had gone extinct a long time ago. Second-generation demon saint had thought that Shen Wuyue was just a rare deer divine beast, and had never thought that he would actually be a deer qilin. Naturally, in this deer qilin form, Shen Wuyue's personality and combat strength would change, and even his personality would change. This was also one of the main reasons why Shen Wuyue had always been unwilling to reveal his true form. He gazed at second-generation demon saint. Without that old look, Shen Wuyue's gaze in this form actually seemed a little tender and affectionate, and second-generation demon saint's heart rippled like a spring breeze. Oh no, this was, second-generation demon saint's old face turned red. He was actually flushed from being stared at by his own sage master. The point was that he clearly knew that Shen Wuyue was a man. Not counting your batch, I've led 2 batches of demon saints. Judging from your aura, you seem to be the weakest batch, Shen Wuyue said leisurely, and even his voice sounded very pleasant. Second-generation demon saint, Shen Wuyue, a mere 3-headed phoenix actually managed to injure you to this extent. Demon saint's lips twitched at these words. Why was he injured to this extent? Shen Wuyue, why? After saying that, Shen Wuyue raised his head to look at the horizon. The 3-headed phoenix in the sky had been observing him since the beginning. It had been quite intimidated by Shen Wuyue's aura after deer qilin transformation, and even a few of its feathers had fallen off. Shen Wuyue, Wuyue, Demon Generation Wuyue said. The 3-headed phoenix clan, Shen, it and Phoenix Saint, and Wuing, Shen, Phoenix Saint, Dragon, and a formless wave of spiritual energy followed Shen Wuyue's movement and grabbed towards the 3-headed phoenix. The 3-headed phoenix screeched in fright and spewed out rainbow-colored divine flames from its mouth, but Shen Wuyue faced the flames fearlessly. Shen armor, that qilin the armor was, Yang, Lu, Shen of Lu of demon, which Shen spirit Lu had Lu god. The rainbow divine fire roasted Shen Wuyue's palm and the back of his hand, but it actually didn't bring him any pain at all. The spiritual energy in Shen Wuyue's palm was as vast as the ocean, and it firmly imprisoned the 3-headed phoenix like a birdcage. It was very much like how Tathagata had imprisoned the 9-headed golden condor in the past. No matter how the 3-headed phoenix struggled, it was useless, and it was directly caught firmly in Shen Wuyue's palm. I was wondering what kind of powerful beast it was. This 3-headed phoenix is only a so-so. Shen Wuyue grabbed the 3-headed phoenix and played with it in his hands, folding its wings again and again, and even twisting its 3 heads together like a fried dough twist, as if he was playing with 1,000 paper cranes. That 3-headed phoenix was completely autistic, allowing Shen Wuyue to do whatever he wanted. It dared to be angry but didn't dare to say anything. He single-handedly captured the 3-headed phoenix. This was too strong. Behind them, second-generation demon saint was flabbergasted. He'd never thought that the difference between Shen Wuyue before and after transformation would actually be so great. Even the horse monkey Soju was no better than this. An adult 3-headed phoenix might be a little stronger, but this one is still underage and can't even speak. It's boring. After playing with it for a while, Shen Wuyue felt bored, so he put the 3-headed phoenix on his shoulder. The 3-headed phoenix didn't even dare to move. Second-generation demon saint was extremely excited. Old Shen, want to praise me? Or are you going to give me a bonus? Shen Wuyue smiled. Old Shen, your gender, I'm a man. And right now, I'm my second personality. Although my appearance has changed a lot, I'm still wearing one. Oh, second-generation demon saint sighed inwardly and couldn't help looking disappointed. I'll have to maintain this form for a while until the antlers that were eaten grow back. Shen Wuyue pursed his lips. It's all because Shen Wuyue is too stubborn. In fact, if he really runs into a situation where he can't win, there's no harm in calling me out. In any case, once the antlers grow back, the personality will switch back. Shen Wuyue. That's what I call his first personality. He also calls me Yu. You can call me that too. Shen Wuyue narrowed his eyes and curled the corners of his lips into a brilliant smile. This was the first time second-generation demon saint realized that even a man could have such a beautiful smile. Speaking of his experience as second-generation demon saint, it was purely because he had been tricked by first-generation demon saint back then. If first-generation demon saint hadn't deliberately scared him and made him pee under the holy pillar wouldn't have forced him to become second-generation demon saint. What was the most painful thing about being demon saint? For second-generation demon saint, the most painful thing wasn't managing and maintaining order in the entire demon world, it was the lack of freedom. His range of activity was restricted by the holy pillar. Before he found the next demon saint, he could only stay in demon saint's palace above the holy pillar for the rest of his life. Thus, second-generation demon saint had originally been very resentful of being demon saint. Not only did he have no freedom, the only person who accompanied him was that boring and stubborn old man, Shen Wuyue, who always liked to undermine him in front of outsiders. But now, second-generation demon saint suddenly realized, even if he stayed in demon saint's palace for the rest of his life, it didn't seem too bad. At the very least, the transformed Shen Yue was a pleasing boy, it was a pity he wasn't a girl. But at the very least, he was much better than that boring Shen Yue. Where did this three-headed phoenix come from? Second-generation demon saint asked. Shen Wuyue turned his gaze to the three-headed phoenix on his shoulder. This little fellow had already been completely tamed. The little fellow chirped a few times. Although it didn't speak human language, Shen Yue still understood it. It says it's from outside the domain of the gods. Domain of the gods. Second-generation demon saint turned pale with fright. Chapter 9:12. Because of Wang Zhen's descent, everyone already knew about the domain of the gods. But now, before they could figure it out, a domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods had suddenly popped up. What kind of place was this? Both Demon Saint and Shen Eryu were very curious. Should we report this to the Office of Strategic Deception? Second-generation Demon Saint asked. The Office of Strategic Deception is currently our demon world's biggest partner. You can make the decision yourself, there's no need to ask me for advice. Shen Eryu said indifferently, but for this domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods to be able to rear a three-headed phoenix, the strength of the people inside is definitely not simple. Also, look. Speaking up to this point, Shen Eryu pressed his fingers against the neck of the three-headed phoenix's middle head, and actually pulled out a thin thread. Second-generation Demon Saint felt that this scene was a little familiar. This thread is made of a very special material, but what's certain is that this three-headed phoenix is being manipulated. This thread is a little stronger than the one Wang Zhen used, and it acts as a puppet. No matter what it is, as long as it's connected to this puppet thread, it can be manipulated from behind the scenes. Seeing this, second-generation Demon Saint's eyes darkened. He sensed that the winds and clouds in this world, no, perhaps the winds and clouds in this universe were about to be blown into ripples. It was Wednesday, August 30th, the 17th day of the summer break. In the last 2 days, Miss Bai Qiao's creative new game cultivation emulator had been everywhere, whether it was on the school's Tieba, the class group or the hot headlines on various major platforms. The game's popularity exceeded everyone's expectations. It hadn't even been officially released to the public yet, but the number of pre-orders had broken 10 million in 2 days. This was something no one could have imagined. Thus, the Office of Strategic Deception set up a game group, with Miss Bai Qiao as the group leader. This was a show of goodwill, a way to rope her in, and even more to stabilize this Miss Bai Qiao's heart. After joining the sect, they would be one family. And most importantly, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal offered Miss Bai Qiao a high salary that she couldn't refuse, so that she wouldn't have to ask her cheap father, Boss Jean, for money to buy games. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found someone to finish building the game group's hall on the same day, and hung a game group sign on the door. But the truth was that the game group's interior was more like an internet cafe. When other people in the Office of Strategic Deception wanted to relax and have fun, they could directly enter with the sect Jade Talisman. Sect disciples had free internet access. Moreover, they could also enjoy unlimited refreshments and tea services in the internet cafe according to their class levels. All the computers in the gaming group's internet cafe were of the highest grade. If visitors from other sects wanted to enter the internet cafe, they would have to pay 50 immortal gold per hour. It could be said that the Office of Strategic Deception's plan was already in full swing. The hot sales of Heavenly Dao Broccoli and the development of the Cultivation Emulator game had now become an important source of income for the Office of Strategic Deception. That day, several Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples who had gone to the Office of Strategic Deception to buy broccoli passed by the game team's internet cafe. However, when they entered, they were shocked by the high prices of the internet cafe. So expensive. The Immortal Palm Tree sect disciple shrunk his neck. 50 immortal gold per hour, 5 immortal gold per sausage. Why is your grilled sausage so expensive? The Immortal Palm Tree sect disciple questioned the little brother at the front desk with his head lowered. If you want to buy it, then buy it. If you don't, then just watch. This little brother was none other than sect leader Su Xing, who had been present at the Office of Strategic Deception's opening ceremony back then. For a previous review, see Chapter 817, One Man's Sect Leader. At the opening ceremony last time, Su Xing had used his palm techniques to win a match and obtained a first-class holy weapon as a reward. But to date, apart from Su Xing, sect leader no longer had any other disciples, and even the sect's business license had expired several years ago. Later, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had made Su Xing stay at the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, Su Xing was someone who could subconsciously comprehend Heavenly Dao, which was a great help to the study of Heavenly Dao. Now, Su Xing was already part of the Goon team, and his direct superior was Fang Xing. The gaming group had just been set up, and Miss Bai Qiao was busy playing games, so Fang Xing sent Su Xing to the gaming group to look after the internet cafe. No matter what the occasion was, there had to be someone to keep watch. Su Xing had shown off his skills at the sect celebration last time, and had been covered by numerous media outlets. Although the sect leader wasn't a high-level sect, a lot of people had already recognized Su Xing after his appearance last time. When they raised their heads now, the two Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples had stunned expressions on their faces. Why is it you, Brother Su? One of the Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples, who looked like the senior brother, reacted quickly and immediately laughed out loud. The ingredients in this sausage are Heavenly Dao broccoli, Heavenly Dao crispy noodle snacks and hand-picked dragon pig meat. One sausage costs 5 immortal gold, and it's definitely a fair deal. Don't talk nonsense when you go out. Su Xing chuckled as he stared at the two of them. He rubbed his palms together as if he was sharpening a knife, and when his palms met, they actually made the crisp sound of godly metal colliding, and the two disciples couldn't help swallowing. This wasn't because they were salivating from the aroma of the sausage, but purely because they were frightened by Su Xing. During the sect celebration, the video of Su Xing's palm had been broadcasted to all the major platforms, so the two disciples naturally knew how powerful Su Xing's palm technique was. 5 immortal gold. Worth it. I'll buy it. Thus, the senior brother decided to give them face. He took out a gold note from his wallet, which could be directly exchanged for immortal gold, and had a different denomination from ordinary coins. There were denominations of 50, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. The senior brother took out a 50 immortal gold note, which made Su Xing laugh. How many do you want, little brother? The man weakly raised a finger. One finger. What's wrong with you, little brother? You're not buying one for your junior brother. 2 sticks then, let me confirm, 2 10 immortal gold bars. And there's a discount when applying for a membership card now, top up 500 and get 500 free. The membership price is only 3 immortal gold for 1 sausage. Do you want to do it? What's wrong with you, little brother? The salary of Immortal Palm Tree sect should be quite high, right? Can't even afford 500 immortal gold bars. Or are you not giving me face? I'll do it. The Immortal Palm Tree sect brother gritted his teeth and decided to go all out. We have bronze members here, top up 500 and get 500 free. Gold members top up 1,000 and get 1,000 free. Diamond members top up 10,000 and get 10,000 free. What kind do you want? Is there a difference? The bronze sausage membership price is 3 immortal gold bars, the gold membership price is 2 immortal gold bars, and the diamond membership price is 1 immortal gold bar. We'll also give you 1 free every day after you log in. P.S. Put up a flag that probably no one will see. Before the first day of the new year, if this chapter says it breaks 150, I'll prepare for 10 chapters to explode during the new year. Chapter 9:13. The 2 Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples were now extremely regretting coming to this internet cafe. This was too much. But they had to give Su Xing face. Everyone knew that after the last sect celebration, Su Xing and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had become very close. Who was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? On the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception, even the 10 generals gave them face. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception was currently the only light force that directly cooperated with Huaxiao Alliance. Therefore, it was very important to be happy. On the day of the sect's celebration, Immortal Palm Tree sect hadn't sent a representative. The sect leader of Immortal Palm Tree sect was now full of regret, so he signed a large order with the Office of Strategic Deception on the day the Heavenly Dao broccoli went on sale. On one hand, it was an apology. On the other hand, it was a show of sincerity for future cooperation. As for Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples, there was no need to even mention them. There was now a clear rule in Immortal Palm Tree sect that disciples must vigorously support all of the Office of Strategic Deception's businesses. Actually, just this alone was enough to make the 2 disciples unable to shirk the responsibility. They couldn't let anyone catch them. I'll get a gold one. After making up his mind, eldest senior brother gritted his teeth and took out a few gold notes from his wallet. Su Xing glanced at the junior brother beside him and found that this junior brother was secretly laughing with a gloating expression. He hurriedly said, "Since you've already decided to apply for a gold membership, why don't you add another 500 and charge 1,500? You can upgrade it to a combo package. 1 card can be used by 2 people. Take care of your junior brother. But the extra 500 will have to be paid by your junior martial brother." The junior brother's expression instantly turned ashen. He couldn't refuse, so he took out 500 gold notes and made a combination card with his senior brother. On the other side, Su Xing happily accepted the money. Just as he was entering the customer information, he suddenly remembered and looked at the 2 of them. "Ah, right. Do you want to add another 500? Our internet cafe has just opened for business, and there is a redemption service. Another 500 immortal gold can be exchanged for a crispy noodle snack packet." Don't, we don't have money." The 2 Immortal Palm Tree sect brothers were about to cry. Su Xing smiled. "Don't regret it. Actually, it wasn't that they didn't have the money, but they felt that the exchange wasn't worth it. 500 immortal gold for a bag of snacks, only a fool would do that. Ten minutes later, the pair from Immortal Palm Tree sect left with their gold membership cards for the Office of Strategic Deception's internet cafe, both of them with despairing expressions on their faces. Su Xing leaned his elbow against the door as he watched the 2 fools leave. It was still Wednesday, August 30th. Not long after the 2 Immortal Palm Tree sect disciples left, a van with the logo of the General Administration of 100 Schools drove directly to the entrance of the Office of Strategic Deception. A group of people got out of the car: Wang Ling, Super Chen, Hero Gua and Little Peanut. Number 60 High's Grade 1, Class 3 squad had assembled. In the car, Super Chen had already been jabbering away for a long time. He couldn't believe that he had actually received an invitation from the Office of Strategic Deception. Last night, he had clearly been complaining that he hadn't gotten a beta number for Cultivation Emulator, but the next day, they had sent him an invitation. The invitation was signed by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and stamped with a gold stamp. They were invited to visit the Office of Strategic Deception's newly built internet cafe, along with a set of tickets for each hall and a gift bag for the internal beta test. Fang Xing got out of the car in the front passenger seat and smiled. Don't celebrate too early, we're only allowed to visit today. We're underage, so be content that Senior Odd Zhua entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to send us an invitation. So we're really only allowed to visit? Dopey Gua and Super Chen were a little disappointed. It's good to have a gift bag for the internal beta test. In any case, we can take it back to play. Little Peanut grinned. As commissary in charge of studies, under Dopey Gua and Super Chen's lead, he had already completely embarked on a path of no return. I told you, Wang Ling is a mascot. Super Chen rubbed his head, still a little amazed. But why did Senior Odd Zhua suddenly invite us? Did you forget that Wang Ling borrowed Senior Zhua's spirit sword at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet? Senior Odd Zhua is expressing his gratitude, Fang Xing replied. Fang Xing and Odd Zhua had already colluded last night to come up with this excuse. I told you, Wang Ling is a mascot. Hearing this, Super Chen didn't doubt it, and directly laughed heartily. Otherwise, I would have thought that classmate Wang Ling had opened the Office of Strategic Deception. Fang Xing, Wang Ling, as Fang Xing had said, they were only here to visit the internet cafe this time. The Office of Strategic Deception's internet cafe was a regular internet cafe, so it naturally had to look like one. They couldn't even go through the back door. Holy shit! As soon as they entered the internet cafe, Super Chen was immediately startled by the scene in front of him. He felt that this couldn't be considered an internet cafe at all, it was simply built like a palace, and all the computers were holographic pods. As long as you lay down and put on a helmet, you could directly connect to the internet. You could do whatever you wanted. Even if you played for a long time, you wouldn't feel tired. Once you entered the holographic pods, you felt like you were in a dream, and your body was completely relaxed. Furthermore, the holographic game pods that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought were very advanced and came with a massage function. Fang Xing had already informed Su Xing before they came, and as he showed them around, he introduced them to all kinds of information about the internet cafe. These holographic game pods are also the latest model, and there's also an excretion device at the bottom. If you want to go to the bathroom midway, you can directly turn on the toilet mode. When that happens, the holographic pod will directly turn into a closed-off toilet. Su Xing said, do you see that button with the word poop drawn on it? That's the toilet mode button. What's that? At that moment, Dopey Guo pointed to the button below the toilet mode button, which looked like two fish balls strung together. This is the bouncing egg mode. Considering that some customers might be so happy in our holographic pods that they forget their duties, we added this mode. Its main function is to moisten the intestines and ease the bowel movement. Everyone knows that lying down or sitting down for too long can easily lead to constipation. Your service is really thorough. Dopey Guo sighed. All the excrement will eventually be collected in the wastewater tank, and after special treatment, it will be turned into fertilizer for the Heavenly Dao broccoli breeding shed. The internet cafe just opened today, and there are already a lot of nascent soul and soul formation customers. Their fertilizer is actually quite hard to come by. During the introduction, Su Xing kept glancing at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye every now and then. Except for Super Chen, Dopey Gua and Little Peanut, everyone here was well aware of Wang Ling's identity. Chapter 9:14. There wasn't a single core member of the Office of Strategic Deception who didn't know Wang Ling's identity, a reclusive big shot who pretended to be a 16-year-old high school student. It wasn't just Wang Ling, everyone in the Wang family's small villa was also a big shot. This was all thanks to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's brain and internal propaganda. It turned out that sometimes it wasn't bad to have friends who could make up stories, since they could actually save a lot of explaining. In any case, these people were all core members and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's confidants. Their mouths were trustworthy, and they wouldn't take the initiative to spill the beans. Wang Ling knew that his reclusive big shot hat couldn't be removed from these people's minds. Even if they knew he was still in high school, they would still feel that this was an Almighty's bad taste. In many people's eyes, the reason why Almighties could become Almighties was because they more or less had some eccentricities. It was a good thing to cultivate steadily, and the truth of having one's feet on the ground would never change. However, people with eccentricities often had very strong egos. Generally speaking, in the cultivation world, it was easier for people with their own personalities and independent styles to succeed. This might sound like fallacious reasoning, but it was in fact true. Wang Ling himself also felt that he had some eccentricities, such as his penchant for peeping, his passion for crispy noodle snacks, and his love for studying. Father and Mother Wang had probably instilled in him from a young age that studying was always a good thing. After all, he was only 16 years old, and his experience was far from that of those old seniors who had lived through the millennia and witnessed the country's rise to prosperity and power step by step. But while Wang Ling loved to study, there were times when he also liked to goof off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have enchanted the monster pen and goblin eraser to do his homework for him. In order to keep his grades down in exams, Wang Ling usually studied ahead of time. He could do all the homework himself, sometimes he just didn't feel like it and was too lazy to do it. Of course, most of the time, Wang Ling didn't do his homework because he was in the mood, but purely for the limited edition crispy noodle snacks. His homework couldn't be sold for much money. Sometimes, as soon as he brought it to school, Super Chen and Hero Guo would run over and start copying it with the godly skill of the flow of multiple pens. It was said that during the busiest time in the third year of high school, the seniors in the third year of high school, they were all top students, began to charge fees to help others complete their homework in order to save up for their tuition fees. They could even imitate people's handwriting to be exactly the same. This had already developed this industry to a commercial value. In Wang Ling's opinion, copying homework wasn't good, and was harmful to oneself. Helping someone else with their homework for a fee was even worse. It wasn't helping them, but harming them. Wang Ling had never felt that his homework was valuable, but it couldn't stop his homework from selling like hotcakes over at the Heavenly Tao. The equivalent exchange that the Heavenly Axiom had conducted over the past few years was not as valuable as his homework. Wang Ling noticed that from the moment he entered the Office of Strategic Deception's territory, he had been the focus of all kinds of staff members. After entering the internet cafe, Su Xing kept peeping at her. Actually, Wang Ling didn't really care. Too many things had happened in the first half of high school, which had actually made him feel a lot more at ease. He no longer felt uncomfortable all over when someone glanced at him for the slightest bit. Let them look. You're just looking because you're good looking. That's why they look at you. Thinking this way, Wang Ling felt a lot more at ease. Besides, he had used the great face-shaping spell to make slight adjustments to his appearance, and had deliberately made himself ugly. Actually, it wasn't all that good-looking. Even when Wang Ling himself looked in the mirror, he felt that his face was mediocre. Compared with those fresh meat on TV with fair and tender faces, high noses, straight eyebrows and oval faces, he was still a long way off. In terms of looks, Wang Ling felt that he couldn't compare to even a tenth or two of Immortal Toya. He was just a high school student who was pleasing to the eye. But Wang Ling hadn't expected Fang Xing to actually be a little unhappy that Su Xing kept looking at him. In the Office of Strategic Deception, Fang Xing was now Su Xing's immediate superior. Thus, when Su Xing looked at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if he was looking at a cobra standing on its hind legs and staring at him, and cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. Su Xing had already heard that this Ling Zhenren was the Office of Strategic Deception's group favorite, and that everyone treasured him to no end. But this was a little too exquisite, and Wang Ling had only taken a few glances. As a newcomer, Su Xing naturally didn't dare offend his superior. He smiled foolishly and withdrew his gaze. Then, he brought them to a small room. This was the reception room in the game group's internet cafe. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared the machines in advance, and there were exactly 5 game machines in holographic pods. The 3 friends from number 60 high were instantly pleasantly surprised. This, Fang Xing smiled. You're not old enough to go online in an internet cafe, but this is the reception room. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Chief of the Office of Strategic Deception, specially prepared these machines here and invited us to experience them. He sent me the physical verification, but didn't tell you before because he wanted to give you a surprise. Actually, this was a form of preferential treatment. Super Chen and Dopey Guo were extremely excited. They had never sat in such high-end game pods before, and it was actually unrealistic to buy one. It wasn't that they couldn't afford it. It was just that it was a little awkward at this stage in high school. It was inevitable that their parents would be angry with such a big machine at home. When all was said and done, the college entrance examination hadn't started yet, so it wasn't appropriate for them to engage in this kind of extreme entertainment. One by one, they sat down in the holographic game pods. The soft sofa and comfortable cushions made them feel as if they were in a land of gentleness. This was too comfortable. It was like cotton everywhere. After lying down, they felt as if they had sunk into water, and their bodies were as light as a feather. Even if they didn't play games, it was very comfortable to lie down here and sleep. Damn! I'm definitely going to buy one in my lifetime. I'll buy it once I get into university. I'll buy it even if I have to spend all my money. Super Chen was excited. Quit your games first. I reckon that you'll be able to save enough money for one by the time you get into university. Dopey Guo chuckled. In fact, it wasn't impossible as long as they saved money on weapon enhancement scrolls. A top-of-the-line holographic pod wasn't expensive, it was only 1.6 million yuan. Little Peanut lay in the holographic pod and prayed. His family was a Buddhist, and he put his palms together in a Buddhist salute as if he were praying. My parents said that life would be easy after I get into university. Although he was lying in the pod now, Little Peanut still felt a little guilty, which was probably what all well-behaved children who were about to be led astray felt at this time. As the well-behaved child of the family and the class commissary in charge of studies, Little Peanut didn't even use a smartphone at home, let alone play games. It was only when Little Peanut's parents had seen Audiobook's invitation that they had agreed to let him go for a study assignment that they had agreed to let him go. Seeing that everyone was lying in the game pods, Su Xing smiled and said, "Everyone, get ready. Please lie down in your most comfortable positions, and I'll turn them on." He had an administrator remote control in his hand. After he pressed the button, the doors of the 5 holographic game pods closed. Whether it was Su Xing, Fang Xing or Wang Ling, none of them had expected this simple experience to actually cause trouble. Chapter 9:15. The moment the cabin door closed, something happened that Su Xing did not expect. The remote control for closing the cabin door was separate from the remote control for turning on the cabin door. Su Xing did not even press the turn-on button, but the holographic game cabin actually started on its own. Su Xing frowned. He subconsciously sensed that something wasn't right, so he immediately took out the 2 remote controls and pressed the off button. In the end, they all failed. Was there something wrong with the machines? Su Xing yelled, "Pull the switch." For a moment, all the lights in the internet cafe disappeared. Several confused customers came out of the virtual cabins to ask what was going on. I was having fun, why did the power go out? I'm only halfway through. Holy shit. Brother, you're awesome, you're in an internet cafe, and you're using a game cabin." The customers on the side were astonished. "That's right. The only koi in the cultivation world is so good. And the author is so handsome. He doesn't even ask for monthly votes during the new year." There's actually an author who doesn't ask for monthly votes nowadays. Maybe it's because there aren't enough updates, so he's too embarrassed to ask for them. "By the way, brother, what were you doing just now?" "I was reading The Chicken Soup written by the famous chicken soup master, teacher Mimi Meng Meng. Just as my soul was about to be healed, the powers suddenly went out. Damn it." The current situation was that the internet cafe's power switch had already been completely pulled off. But Wang Ling and the other four's machines were still running in front of Su Xing. Something had happened. Su Xing broke out in a cold sweat, but he didn't know who on earth the enemy in front of him was. "Should I break it by force?" Su Xing stared at the 5 machines in front of him. Then, he gritted his teeth and struck the game cabin with his palm. He couldn't care less now, saving people was the most important thing. His palm hit the door of the game cabin with great precision. But the moment his palm touched the cabin door, Su Xing's expression changed dramatically, because there was actually an invisible barrier above the cabin door that the naked eye couldn't see through. When was it set up? Su Xing's expression changed dramatically. The game cabins had just arrived this morning, and they had already been turned on to ensure that there were no problems before they had been placed here until Ling Junren and his classmates arrived. During this time, no one had entered the room at all. Su Xing had been keeping watch outside the whole time, but hadn't noticed anyone suspicious. What he didn't expect was that the game capsule had been tampered with. However, before Su Xing figured out who did it, a powerful wave of spiritual energy came from the place where Su Xing had just punched the barrier. Damage backlash? Su Xing gritted his teeth and sent out another palm strike at the shockwave in an attempt to neutralize it. Su Xing's palm technique contained heavenly Tao, and its power was not weak. However, when his palm collided with the recoil of the psionic energy, Su Xing was thrown backward and vomited a large mouthful of blood. It was actually a backlash that doubled in power. Su Xing half knelt on the ground. His sternum had already been shattered, and even the walls of the room had collapsed. For a moment, the internet cafe became a mess. What's going on? Su Xing endured the pain and stood up. At that moment, he suddenly thought of someone. Miss Bai Qiao. The game pod in Miss Bai Qiao's office had also arrived in the morning. Given that the power switch had already been pulled, it was reasonable to say that Miss Bai Qiao should have already jumped out of the game pod in a thunderous rage and started swearing. But Miss Bai Qiao was nowhere to be seen. Had she been hit as well? Su Xing hurriedly notified Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. But to his surprise, as soon as he dialed the number, a space fissure appeared behind him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and a very pretty person, who couldn't be sure whether it was a boy or a girl, walked out of the fissure. However, this person's aura was inhuman, and had a very strong demon aura. It was Shen Wuyue, who was still in his second personality Shen Eryu state. Still a step too late. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Shen Eryu looked at the injured Su Xing and helped him up. He took off the OK bandage on his head where the antlers had been broken off. In his amazement, Su Xing saw an arc of blood spurt out from the broken part with a "baiu" sound. Shen Eryu took out a disposable plastic cup that he always carried with him and skillfully filled it with blood, then put the OK bandage back on. Su Xing, he gave the cup of blood to Su Xing and said in a voice as soft as the cool moon, "You're badly injured. If you don't want any side effects, drink this cup of blood." This was the person whom Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had brought along, and it was clear that both of them had expected this. Although this strange person had demon aura, Su Xing didn't mind and drank the cup of blood in one gulp. Dear Qilin blood had a strong restorative ability, and was even stronger than Little Silver's blood. After drinking the cup, Su Xing was pleasantly surprised to find that all the pain in his body had been swept away. His broken bones had healed, and even his complexion was a lot better than before. Let me introduce you. This is Lord Shenwuyue, the Holy Master who works for Demon Saint in the demon world. Seeing that Su Xing had recovered, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal introduced him. Holy Master of the demon world, the corners of Su Xing's mouth twitched. He felt that he had underestimated the office of strategic deception. It was actually connected to the top dog of the demon world. Suppressing his shock, Su Xing asked, Senior Immortal, what on earth is going on? The Holy Palace in the demon world detected fluctuations from outside the domain of the gods, and captured a three-headed phoenix from outside the domain of the gods, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied, the extinct three-headed phoenix was raised in captivity in the domain of the gods. Puppet strings were planted on its body and it launched an attack on the demon realm Holy Palace. In the end, it was suppressed and captured by Lord Shenwuyue. Outer Divine Territory. Su Xing felt as if his worldview had been refreshed. In the past 2 days, Su Xing's understanding of the cultivation world was constantly being refreshed. He had previously thought that the 10 generals were already the symbol of the top big shots in the cultivation circle, but now he discovered that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. As he spoke, Shen Eryu inspected the barrier of the lower stage and then frowned deeply. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, how is it? Shen Eryu said, this barrier is a power I've never seen before. It's not within the scope of my ability, but I can be sure that it's neither the heavenly Tao nor the heretic Tao. It should be a power that surpasses the other two. You should be able to sense it, right? You also possess the power of the heavenly Tao. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression was grave as he nodded. This indeed isn't heavenly Tao, our opponent's realms are not on the same level as ours. Shen Eryu sighed. So, there's nothing we can do. We can only believe in Lord Ling's power. Apart from that, maybe we can ask Mr. Wang Zhen and the others for help. They're from the domain of the gods, and might have some understanding of this power, Shen Eryu said. Also, you're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.